Recently, influenza has been frequent. According to research, the initial symptoms of this virus include cold, fever, and diarrhea. In severe cases, patients exhibit slightly sluggish movements, stiff limbs, and loss of smell. Experts state that this influenza is currently an unknown virus and have named it the T virus. When Lin Qin woke up groggily, the whispers around him gradually became clearer. Influenza. That was the influenza virus that broke out just before the apocalypse. Due to the relentless heat and deteriorating air quality, all kinds of viruses emerged one after another. The most severe among them was this T influenza virus. At first, everyone thought it was just an ordinary flu. Take some medicine and see a doctor, and it would be fine. But this was no ordinary flu virus. It was a real zombie virus. As time went on, the number of patients surged dramatically, and the virus incubation period came to an end. On the streets and the subways, on the buses, zombies erupted everywhere. The post-apocalyptic situation caught everyone off guard. Stockpiles of food were exhausted, and thefts and murders occurred in the fight for survival. But even so, this news was a report from before the apocalypse. What's going on? Hadn't he died? In such a massive explosion, how could he have survived? Before Lin Qin could come to his senses, ding, the system has restarted. The infinite replication system is binding to the host. Ding, binding successful. Scanning the host. Host Lin Qin, age 25, combat power 0, countdown to apocalypse restart 168 hours. Countdown running 167 hours, 59 minutes 30 seconds. Tip: the infinite system can infinitely replicate any item with no quantity limit. This system comes with a built-in storage space with instant preservation. It is an essential and handy system for home and travel. You deserve it. Note: the storage space can be viewed internally to check items at any time. Data is being transmitted. Ding, transmission complete. Lin Qin was stunned for a moment, then burst into ecstasy. He had not only been reborn, but also obtained a system. An infinite replication system with storage space. He had hit the jackpot. After all, in the apocalypse, supplies were the #1 priority. And hiding supplies required more than just skill. With the infinite replication system, not only would he never worry about supplies, but he also saved the trouble of hiding them. No one would find out or covet them. And most importantly, it saved money. Buying large quantities of supplies would require a considerable sum. But with the infinite system, he only needed to buy one of each item and then replicate it. For someone like him, with little savings, this was heavenly news. It couldn't be better. Lin Qin could no longer restrain himself. He looked around, then walked over to the refrigerator, took out the cold Sprite, and began to replicate it. Sure enough, 1 bottle became 2, and 2 became 4. Then he stored the Sprite into his storage space, watching it disappear from his hand. Then, shifting his inner vision, he saw the empty space where 4 bottles of Sprite were neatly stacked in the corner. Lin Qin withdrew his inner vision and suppressed the joy in his heart. He recalled that in his past life, the zombie outbreak was sudden and many people were trapped in their homes, afraid to go out. The meager food could only hold out for 3 or 4 days. At first, neighbors helped each other. Later, as resources dwindled, robbery and murder were the least of it. Cannibalism, eating grass roots, and tree bark all became common. He was no exception. To survive, he had drunk wastewater from ditches, rummaged through food scraps and landfills, and even slept in trash piles to mask his scent. In the end, he died in an explosion 2 months later. Lin Qin opened a can of Sprite and drank it. The taste was thousands of times better than the water from the ditch. The system's functions were simple. After a few trials, Lin Qin had mostly figured them out. Next, he needed a good plan. The most urgent task was to prepare all kinds of survival supplies. After all, these supplies wouldn't appear out of thin air. He needed at least 1 sample of each item to replicate. With that thought, Lin Qin immediately turned on the computer and began planning. Regarding supplies, under the premise of ensuring personal safety, he needed to prepare enough food and water. Of course, weapons and medicine were also extremely important. But the government's control over medicine and weapons was very strict. Many medicines required a prescription. If he tried to purchase every type of medicine all at once, it would likely draw attention. However, he wasn't entirely sure. After all, as a healthy young man, he had never needed to buy all kinds of medicine. There's a first time for everything. He would first buy the essential ones and deal with the rest based on the situation as it unfolded. As for weapons, for now, the only things he could buy were some knives and fire axes. Weapon control was strict too. Compared to bare hands, these were enough. Next came daily necessities and tools. Counting carefully, there were 6 major categories in total. Food, medicine, weapons, tools, daily necessities, electrical appliances. Food was the easiest. In the next 2 days, he would buy all the food he wanted to eat, including rice flour, cooking oil, soy sauce, vinegar, and vegetables, pork, beef, chicken, alcoholic beverages, and so on. And of course, gas canisters couldn't be forgotten. As for medicine, in his past life, the most urgent early on were cold and fever meds and anti-inflammatories. Oh, and a thermometer too. Besides those, gauze, alcohol, iodine. Other medicines couldn't be missing either. As for weapons, he could only think of a few types for now. He'd take a trip to the wholesale market later to see. Daily necessities. This category was too broad. He'd try to write as complete a list as possible. As for electronics, in the future when the heat continues, air conditioners and cooling fans would come in handy. And once the apocalypse began and the internet collapsed, radios and walkie-talkies would be the only way to receive important national messages. But later all electrical circuits would go down, every house would lose power. So generators and batteries would be especially important. But there was one thing to note: the heat. Although it was only May, the temperature had already reached over 30 degrees. After the heavy rain 6 days later, the weather became humid and hot, stifling, as if being grilled over a fire. The apocalypse began after that rain. Continuous high temperature plus the T-virus. Many Monday commuters still went to work on various transportations despite being sick. The virus seemed to mutate, suddenly emerging wildly in all areas. Recalling this scene, Lin Qin still felt a lingering fear. The place he lived now wouldn't do. He had to find a suitable apartment through an agent first. Lin Qin listed them one by one, organizing them into a shopping list to avoid missing anything. He then set off for the nearby supermarket. It was well known that large supermarkets carried an extensive variety of items. Even if they couldn't completely satisfy every item on his shopping list, they would certainly cover most of it. Going to the supermarket meant strolling around and picking up a few small items to disguise his unusual behavior. In doing so, he could replicate everything in the entire store, spending just a small amount of money to get everything. This deal was definitely worthwhile. As for the wholesale market, although it was good, he couldn't possibly touch every single item there. People would think he was some sort of strange character, just touching things without buying. He would probably become infamous in the wholesale market in less than a morning. The nearby Walmart was huge and had a very complete variety of goods. Pushing a shopping cart, Lin Qin studied the supermarket's layout and planned his route. To cover everything, he would have to start from the outermost edge. He would sweep through in a back-and-forth pattern from one side to the other. However, it was Monday and most of the shoppers were elderly. Young men like him were relatively rare. Once inside, Lin Qin headed straight for the leftmost shelf. This area was the bakery and prepared food section. Various Swiss rolls, bread, and cakes were displayed in the counters. Items like Swiss rolls and bread were packaged and placed on external shelves, making them easy for Lin Qin to touch. Replication was simple and effortless. The other cakes inside the counter, however, posed some difficulty. He looked around nervously like a thief with a guilty conscience, making sure no one noticed his strange behavior. Then he opened the counter door, touched every item one by one, and finally took only the cheapest small cake inside. A staff member glanced at him, saw the cake in his cart, and lowered her head again. Lin Qin couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. His first replication attempt was a success. But the prepared food section was even harder. 2 staff members stood behind the long counter, and whenever you approached, one would immediately come over and ask what you needed. For Lin Qin, this made it difficult to freely use his ability for replication. Eventually, in the prepared foods area, he replicated several items that were already packaged and stacked on shelves. Roast duck, roast chicken, cornbread. Leaving this area led to the fruit section. Lin Qin pretended to pick and choose, touching apples, oranges, kiwis, watermelons, peaches, cantaloupes, bananas, pineapples, dragon fruits, mangoes, durians, grapes, and crown pears. After going through the entire fruit section, he had replicated everything without attracting any staff attention. The fruit section and the vegetable section were connected. It was near mealtime, so the produce on the shelves was still fresh and well-stocked. He took a handful of garlic heads along with plenty of other vegetables. Things like cabbage, green onions, tomatoes, cauliflower, crown daisy, enoki mushrooms, spinach, beans, sweet potatoes, lettuce, winter melon, pumpkin, and night-blooming flowers. Lin Qin wasn't picky. He replicated them all in turn. After success, he headed straight for the nearest rice and flour section. There was a wide variety of rice, and even Lin Qin, who didn't know much, knew that Wuchang rice was the best. He located the Wuchang rice and began replication. Of course, he wasn't picky. He also replicated other types of rice, such as pearl rice, glutinous rice, purple rice, black rice, soybeans, peanuts, and corn one by one. As for flour, Lin Qin didn't know how to differentiate. He simply replicated the most common plain flour along with those displayed in the bulk bin area. Then he replicated the starch and bread flour placed on the shelves. He didn't know what these were used for, but since they were free, he could study them later. On the shelves, salt, chicken bouillon, MSG, white sugar, light soy sauce, dark soy sauce, aged vinegar, white vinegar, cooking wine, 13 spice, Sichuan pepper, star anise, cinnamon, cumin, chili, pickled mustard, salted vegetables, snow vegetables, and Lao Gan Ma chili sauce. Mushroom paste, beef paste, bean paste, soybean paste. Spicy hot pot base flavors, mala spicy, clear broth, beef tallow, tomato. Oh, and oil. The oil section occupied 2 entire shelves with different brands and types of oil on the front. The back row held various small bottles for cooking. Sunflower oil, olive oil, corn oil, blended oil, sesame oil. To save time, he only selected the common types before moving on to other areas. The seafood and meat section was tricky to replicate, as there were staff watching. The seafood was in water, and the meat counter had an attendant standing there. He wondered if he could replicate the entire display case. Lin Qin tried touching the edge of the counter while chatting to distract the young meat seller. "Master, can you cut me 20 yuan worth of ribs?" 20 yuan of ribs meant only 2 ribs, not many. But it was a common amount for single people in the supermarket. The young butcher was skilled with the knife. He quickly grabbed half a rack, went to the cutting board inside the counter, separated 2 ribs, and began chopping vigorously. Taking advantage of the moment, Lin Qin began replication. Inside his space, the meat counter was replicated, but unfortunately, only the counter, no meat. It seemed that replication could only copy a single object, not anything attached to or contained within it. After figuring this out, Lin Qin saw that the butcher was still chopping. He reached out and pretended to pick through the meat section, touching various cuts. The butcher had finished the ribs and looked at Lin Qin with a slight frown. Lin Qin added, "Give me some meat, just cut a piece from here." The butcher, not suspecting anything, began slicing the pork and said with a smile, "Eating alone. That's a lot." Lin Qin gave a faint smile. "It's easier to keep in the fridge." The butcher didn't suspect anything and continued working. Glancing over, fresh beef and mutton were too expensive and not easy to touch. Maybe he could buy cheaper ones online later. The seafood section also had a staff member standing by who various fish and shellfish were displayed in oxygenated tanks. The possibility of picking by hand was nearly zero, making replication difficult. This wasn't like a traditional market where you could help yourself. After thinking it over, Lin Qin gave up on replicating seafood and fish. He moved on to other areas. There were many freezers, mostly storing various cold drinks and frozen items. He hadn't finished browsing other areas yet. If he took 1 or 2 frozen items now to cover his tracks, they would melt into a mess. It seemed he should leave this for last. After all, he had to pay, even just for appearances. Pushing his cart, Lin Qin arrived at the snack section. There were few people here and no sales assistants were watching. This made replication much more enjoyable. He left his cart in place and began his performance. First, he took out a bag of chips, then looked at a few other bags. Back and forth, he touched every item on that shelf. Chips, cookies, instant noodles, jelly, melon seeds, spicy strips, rice cakes, small bread, self-heating hot pot loasafen. Candies, dried fruits, nuts, dried tofu, beef jerky, canned yellow peaches, canned luncheon meat. Coffee, honey, green tea bags. The snack section was vast, stretching in a long row that would take at least half an hour to traverse. Occasionally, other shoppers would wander by. To make his actions seem plausible, he tossed a few of the cheapest bags of chips into his cart. After nearly half an hour of bustling about, he finally finished browsing the snack aisle. Next came the beverage area. The selection of alcohols here was diverse, and no one was watching over them. Lin Qin seized the moment, replicating everything he could within 10 minutes. As for the drinks, rows upon rows lined the shelves: red wine, white spirits, glutinous rice wine, cola, Sprite, coconut water, Red Bull, orange juice, sparkling water, little lime drink, black tea, green tea, mineral water. He touched each one to replicate them, finishing the entire process in just 10 minutes. Cola, Sprite, coconut water, Red Bull, orange juice, sparkling water, little lime drink, black tea, green tea, mineral water. For instance, tissues, toothbrushes, toothpaste, shampoo, body wash, soap, laundry powder, laundry detergent, dish, soap towels, bath towels, slippers, cotton slippers, and so on. As for sanitary pads, Lin Qin hesitated. He had no use for them himself, but they were said to be excellent for odor absorption and sweat prevention. Just as he was wavering, a saleswoman approached. She directly picked up several packs of sanitary pads and stuffed them into Lin Qin's shopping cart. "Young man, buying for your girlfriend. These are all quite good popular picks. Take them home and they won't let you down." Lin Qin was instantly embarrassed. "No, it's not. What's there to be shy about, young man? Lots of guys buy these for their girlfriends." Lin Qin felt a bit awkward as 2 nearby girls cast him strange glances and whispered among themselves. He took all the sanitary pads out of his cart and placed them back, not forgetting to replicate them first. No need, thank you." Pushing his cart, Lin Qin moved to another shelf. There were numerous brands of bathing essentials, but he didn't need to replicate them all. Just 1 or 2 would suffice. Ensuring he had enough for his own use, he replicated a few items: toothbrushes, toothpaste, shampoo, body wash. He replicated 3 types of toothbrushes: charcoal, nano, and regular. For toothpaste, he copied 3 different brands with varied flavors and functions. For shampoo, he chose 3 variants: refreshing, anti-dandruff, and moisturizing, each from a different brand. His choice of body wash was simpler. Anything refreshing would do, so he picked 3 brands and called it done. For the remaining items like tissues and toilet paper, he replicated the best quality ones. By the time he had touched everything, his hand was cramping. But he was only halfway done. Items like cutting boards, rolling pins, knives, batteries, strainers, spatulas, pots, and induction cooktops. Plastic wrap, disposable cups, trash bags, sponge scrubbers, chopsticks, aluminum foil, steamer cloth, towels, bath towels, quilts, bedding sets, slippers, tablecloths, hangers, wash basins, socks, storage boxes, and so on. For the cutting board, he naturally replicated a larger size. As for the knives, they were locked in a cabinet in the supermarket, so Lin Qin could only replicate the one on display. Batteries came in many models, so he replicated them all. For cookware, he copied everything: frying pans, woks, ceramic pots, rice cookers, induction cooktops, and more. As for bed sheets and quilts, those were just a matter of convenience. After replicating all the other items, Lin Qin had already spent 2 to 3 hours in Walmart. His shopping cart held only a sparse handful of items. Only then did he return to the frozen section to begin. The frozen section held various milks: fresh milk, yogurt, ice cream, tangyuan dumplings, soup, dumplings, fatty beef, fatty lamb, shrimp paste, hot pot meatballs, steak, wontons, buns, steamed buns, hand-grabbed pancakes, as well as various meats already packaged in the refrigerated area. For example, Christian carp, brim, pork ribs, chicken legs, chicken wings, chicken breast, shrimp, beef brisket, lamb chops. A quick glance at the packaging dates showed they were at least 2 days old, not very fresh. But that didn't matter much. It was a pity he had wasted 30 yuan on ribs and pork. Replicating the entire area was relatively quick given the 2 rows of refrigerators and freezers. Lin Qin picked through the selection, grabbed a 70g cup of ice cream, and finally left the frozen section. After nearly 5 hours, he pushed his cart through the checkout counter at Walmart. 20 yuan for ribs, 10 yuan for meat, plus 2 bags of chips and the ice cream. Total cost 50 yuan. If he hadn't wanted to avoid drawing attention, he could have spent nothing at all. Leaving the supermarket, Lin Qin casually tossed his bags into his space. The commercial street here was vast, bustling with snack shops and milk tea stands as he passed by. These foods were something he couldn't even dream of after the apocalypse. When he got home, he would buy 100 or so of them and savor them slowly. Lin Qin made his way into a Suning store. The appliances here were plentiful and could meet his future needs. Air conditioners were too noisy, so they weren't on his replication list. What he wanted were appliances he didn't have at home, like floor-standing air conditioners, heaters, small radiators, and disinfection cabinets. Pretending to browse the various appliances, he casually touched them. Silently and stealthily, he replicated everything he desired. Then Lin Qin moved on to the digital section. Here the latest phones and computers were available, but for the former Lin Qin, these were items he dared not casually buy. A single fruit brand phone cost thousands. Though electricity and networks would eventually fade away, that was a gradual process. He would enjoy them first. He touched the phones and computers, replicating them all. However, Lin Qin also replicated a senior phone. The key point was that its battery life was incredibly durable. One charge could last several days compared to a smartphone. He just had to remember to turn off all the sounds. Portable Wi-Fi cameras, earphones, drones, power banks, batteries, radios. This section didn't consume too much of his time as he had clear targets. After leaving, Lin Qin crossed off the items he had already replicated. The rest were yet to be copied. Wanda Plaza was not small, with numerous stores inside. Lin Qin visited clothing stores he usually dared not enter, replicating all kinds of stylish cool clothes, pants, and shoes. Of course, he also copied some protective clothing, windbreakers, outdoor hiking gear, and specialized clothing for climbing snowy mountains. After all, it was better to be prepared. He entered empty and left empty. However, thicker clothing was unavailable in the mall. It was already May, and the stores had long since replaced their winter stock with spring and summer apparel. Such items could only be procured through other channels. After finishing the useful sections of the mall, the time had already reached 4 in the afternoon. Lin Qin's legs were so weary they felt as if they no longer belonged to him. He had acquired quite a few items, yet there were still many things he had not obtained. After a moment's thought, Lin Qin opened a certain online marketplace and began browsing solar panels, generators, and other large items. A single solar panel was priced as high as 3,500 yuan, while a generator cost 4,000 yuan. Together, these 2 items cost Lin Qin 7,500 yuan. This did not yet include the cost of thick clothing, blankets, beddings, optical discs, USB drives, and other items he had purchased online. But one must risk a loss to gain a profit. After purchasing the essential items, Lin Qin passed by a milk tea shop and began to ponder. Ordering on-site seemed rather troublesome. Better to use a food delivery app. Tea brands: Naishua yogurt, tea dance, fried chicken burgers, fries, skewers, and so on. In terms of variety, Lin Qin only ordered his favorite flavors. Each milk tea shop had about 10 cups, while the snack shops had more variety and thus slightly larger quantities. He scheduled delivery for 8 in the evening and patted his stomach. He was both physically and mentally exhausted, and hunger gnawed at him fiercely. He went to a nearby restaurant and directly requested a private room. He ordered braised spare ribs, vinegar fish, boiled sliced pork, spicy chicken, potato, beef brisket, and mao shuang. For every dish that arrived, Lin Qin duplicated it. The table was laden with dishes, and even the serving waitress couldn't help but cast a few extra glances at Lin Qin. The dishes were aromatic and visually appealing, and Lin Qin began to feast heartily. He completely ignored the waitress' peculiar stares. Without exaggeration, having starved all day, he could devour all the dishes. For Lin Qin, who previously had to scavenge from trash, this was an indescribable bliss. After eating his fill, Lin Qin packed some leftovers. Rubbing his round belly, he didn't forget to buy some duck neck, duck feet, cold noodles, and other snacks from the food street. By 7 o'clock, he set off back to his rented room. At 8 in the evening, the milk tea, fried chicken, and skewers he had ordered earlier in the day were delivered one after another. He directly stored all these items into his space. Only then did he pull out the list and begin to revise. After a day of shopping, food, water, daily necessities, and electricity had been taken care of, but he still hadn't seen where to buy gas canisters. Searching nearby online, all he found were small canisters. He had no idea where to purchase the large ones. Perhaps the gas company could help. It seemed he would have to call and inquire tomorrow. Besides this, the most urgent items were medicine and weapons. On a certain food delivery platform, he could buy some items from different pharmacies. For those requiring a prescription, some could be easily obtained by applying online, while others might not be available. However, since his quantities were small, it probably wouldn't be an issue. For instance, he could buy cold, cough, and fever medicine from one store and heat-clearing, anti-inflammatory, and throat-soothing items from another. After all, pharmacy categories include gastrointestinal, cold skin, heat-clearing, and detoxifying, respiratory, ENT, pediatric, adult, gynecological, and so on. Buying one category per store should not pose too much of a problem. After a moment's thought, Lin Qin began adding items to his cart. The most important were antibiotics. The most common antibiotics were amoxicillin and cephalosporins. Naturally, the address was his current shared rental apartment. He would also filter the medicines to avoid duplicates. Although this was somewhat risky, it was Of course, Lin Qin began searching for people who offered purchasing services online. He would place orders according to his medicine list, or have existing medicines recovered and sent to his address, after which he would refund the full principal plus a commission of 10 to 50 yuan. Naturally, the address was his current shared rental apartment. He would also filter the medicines to avoid duplicates. Although this was somewhat risky, it was the only way Lin Qin could think of to purchase the most comprehensive range of medicines. As for weapons, to be honest, aside from various kitchen knives and fire axes, there were few weapons that could be purchased through legitimate channels. For example, if you searched for machetes or tang swords, the page would directly redirect you to a green network plan educating you on various legal knowledge. Thus, only regular knives, fire axes, expandable batons, and pocket knives were available. For other items, one had to resort to unorthodox channels. After researching for a long time, Lin Qin discovered that unsharpened tang horizontal swords and embroidered spring swords were sold online. Although they were not sharpened, it was not impossible to have them sharpened privately after receiving them. He spent 1,000 yuan to acquire 2 swords, and then sought a master who could sharpen them offline. If a channel emerged later, he could consider it then. It was better than having nothing at all. Of course, it would be even better if he could replicate a police officer's firearm. But Lin Qin did not want to take the risk. The preparation time was already tight enough. If he were caught and detained for a few days, the wasted time would be a loss not worth the gain. As the end approached, he had to be increasingly cautious. His shopping list was complete. Tomorrow, besides the gas issue, he also needed to visit a 4S store. Replicating a few vehicles would be a prudent measure. By the way, before leaving, he had to visit the rental agency downstairs. He would inform them of his ideal housing requirements and have them search simultaneously, saving him considerable time. At the agency, Lin Qin would stay at most half an hour, state his requirements, and leave. Then he would head to the more distant 4S store. After finishing these tasks, he would wait for the online purchases to arrive, wander around to see if there were any gaps to fill, and then choose a house. Everything was arranged properly, and he sat waiting for the items he had just ordered to be delivered. The next morning, Lin Qin began implementing his plan from the previous day. The real estate agency downstairs opened at 8:30. For them, Lin Qin was the first customer. But at the same time, his attire made them reluctant to waste their time. Lin Qin stood for about 30 seconds without any agent approaching him. Finally, a girl who looked like a newcomer, "Sir, are you looking to buy or rent a house? We have a wide range of properties here." Lin Qin raised an eyebrow and got straight to the point. "I want to rent a villa in the suburbs, but my requirements might be high. First, the villas should be sparsely located, preferably with a basement. The space should be spacious and bright, and the landlord must allow me to renovate." The renovation aspect was particularly crucial. After all, he needed to reinforce and modify the thickness and defense level of the doors and windows. If the landlord did not agree, renting it would be pointless. Before the female agent could speak, a male agent nearby who had assumed Lin Qin was a big client immediately began to mock him. "Bro, renovation is pretty much out of the question. You know, landlords who can afford villas only rent them out to recoup some costs. Honestly, I doubt anyone would rent to you. If you want to renovate, you might as well buy a property. Then you'd have many more options." Zhang Feng looked Lin Qin up and down, scrutinizing his attire. A pair of flip-flops, baggy shorts, and an ordinary white t-shirt. "If you ask me, a villa with a basement. You probably can't afford it, can you? Xiao Shui, as a newcomer, you need to keep your eyes wide open. Some clients are worth taking while others are just a waste of time." Lin Qin. It was true that he couldn't afford it. Although he was poorly dressed, what right did a real estate agent have to act so arrogantly? Lin Qin's face instantly turned cold. The female agent Xiao Shui, standing nearby, sensed the tension and immediately reached out to take Lin Qin's arm. This was his last hope. If he could close this deal, he might not lose his job. Following the sensation on his arm, Lin Qin cast a sidelong glance. You see, sir, the landlord might not agree to major renovations, but minor adjustments could be possible. Typically, landlords of villas provide them with decent decoration and may be reluctant to alter the original layout. Moreover, villas with basements generally command a high rent. May I ask what your budget is? Snapping back to reality, Lin Qin touched his nose and said, around 300 to 400. That range should work for properties that meet your requirements. How about we exchange WeChat, and I'll send you any suitable listings directly. Nodding, Lin Qin left the agency in a daze. This female agent was incredibly forward, but his next destination was the 4S dealership. Before heading there, however, Lin Qin changed his attire. He had replicated plenty of designer clothes yesterday, and wearing them would prevent him from standing out. It might even make things easier. Just as Lin Qin had anticipated, the staff at the 4S dealership didn't look down on him. When he expressed a desire to browse alone, they immediately backed off. This actually made things much more convenient for him. Throughout the showroom, Lin Qin replicated a Mercedes-Benz off-road vehicle and a Unimog. These two vehicles, he reasoned, wouldn't be easily toppled by zombies and offered decent speed. They were his top choices. As for other ordinary small cars, Lin Qin had no intention of replicating them for now. Supercars, for instance, were the most useless of all. With low ground clearance and light bodies, they stood no chance against zombies. More importantly, these cars were only suitable for well-paved roads. As for the common sedans, minivans, and trucks, they needed no further mention. After some thought, he realized he also needed a vehicle for the possibility of sleeping on the streets. Something like an RV. But RVs came in many types, some of which were cumbersome and slower than smaller vehicles. Lin Qin recalled seeing a particularly cool RV on Douyin some time ago. Wasn't it called something like Amadiro? After the apocalypse began, he had fantasized about owning such a vehicle. Thinking it over, Lin Qin took out his phone to search for the manufacturer's dealership. Good grief, he would have to go directly to the factory to buy one. Lin Qin had to back down. For one, he lacked the financial means, and for another, time was precious. This multi-brand auto mall might have a display model of such a vehicle. Since it was only available at the factory, Lin Qin had to give up. As for the rest, he didn't have the time to inspect every single vehicle. Leaving the 4S dealership, Lin Qin walked along the road toward the nearby subway station, still reluctantly scrolling through videos of the Amadiro. The more he watched, the more his heart yearned for it. But he only had 5 days left. He couldn't afford to waste a whole day on a single vehicle. Filled with regret and helplessness along the way, he unexpectedly spotted a strikingly cool RV parked by the roadside. Its body was a metallic black, and most importantly, the roof could be raised. It resembled the kind of tent used for outdoor camping. He looked down at the video still playing on his phone. A smile of joy spread across his face. Good heavens, heaven helps those who help themselves. Wasn't this the Amadiro? Lin Qin hesitated no longer, and watching for traffic, crossed the road to approach it. The owner had gotten out and entered a small roadside shop, but the engine was still running. As he passed the passenger side, Lin Qin also noticed a beautiful woman inside the car. She opened the passenger door and stepped out. However, the car was still running, which was good for Lin Qin. He had to replicate this vehicle before the owner came out. Successfully crossing the road, Lin Qin immediately initiated the replication. The process was not long. By the time the owner emerged, Lin Qin had already finished. Acting as if nothing had happened, he walked calmly to a public bicycle, scanned the code, and started riding. After all, subway stations were crowded not just with people, but also with various modes of transport, such as bicycles and electric scooters. Lin Qin hesitated for a second, then replicated both the electric scooters and the bicycles. Overall, it was better to be prepared. Having more was always better than having less, and it cost nothing. With the vehicles secured, his next stop was the nearest gas station to replicate gasoline and diesel. Typically, gas stations have small cans of gasoline sold separately outside. Lin Qin just needed to go and pretend to browse, replicate everything, and walk out. However, concerning the gas canisters, Lin Qin made a phone call to avoid a wasted trip. The place was a small depot not far from the wholesale market, and they even traded in coal. After some thought, he decided to go directly. Having replicated a 15-kilogram gas canister along with briquettes and a stove, Lin Qin headed to the wholesale market. The wholesale market offered a much wider selection than the supermarket. Lin Qin went straight to the seafood wholesale section and began replicating. It was crowded, and the vendors were too busy to pay attention to a single customer like Lin Qin. This allowed him to exploit many loopholes. Yellow croaker, mackerel, sardines, scallops, conch, whelk, octopus, lobster, shrimp, mantis shrimp, green shrimp, large, sea shrimp, swimming crab, mud crab, hairy crab, red crab, scallop, squid, clam, oyster, abalone, Christian carp, brim, snakehead, sea bass, silver carp. All the common types of fish and seafood were replicated. Passing by some deli counters, Lin Qin found it hard to move on. These foods could be eaten directly in the apocalypse, requiring no cooking, simple and quick. And they tasted excellent. The downside was that Lin Qin had to buy them. There were fewer people at the deli counters, so Lin Qin couldn't find an opening. The price for one portion of each item wasn't exactly cheap, but it was still much more affordable than the supermarket. Thinking about the apocalypse, the money he saved wouldn't bring him any real benefit anyway. In the end times, money was treated like dirt. Smoked chicken, smoked duck, smoked rabbit, smoked chicken frame, braised chicken, braised duck, braised chicken head, braised chicken neck, braised chicken liver, braised chicken feet, braised chicken gizzard, braised duck feet, braised duck gizzard. Marinated pork head, marinated pig ears, marinated pig tongue, marinated pig trotters, marinated pig heart, marinated pig liver, marinated pig lungs, marinated pork belly, marinated pork intestines, plain pig lungs, plain pork belly, plain pork intestines. Spicy duck head, spicy duck neck, spicy duck feet, spicy duck gizzard, spicy duck intestines, spicy duck stomach, and so on. Sauced beef, sliced boiled beef, fried fish, spiced crispy fish, spicy crispy fish, smoked meat, cured meat. Lin Qin spent a considerable amount on cooked food alone. Following the crowd, he continued walking. Passing by shops he hadn't entered before, he stopped and mingled among the throng to copy. Especially in front of the live poultry stalls, and the market crowds were not few. Lin Qin directly blended into their ranks, copying a batch for free. He roamed the entire wholesale market for 3 hours before stopping. After this trip, his collection of items was already quite abundant. Lin Qin also copied walkie-talkies and earphones for free. These items would also serve a great purpose. What remained were issues concerning housing. Of course, if he could copy a speedboat and a helicopter, it would be perfect. Of course, he might not know how to operate a yacht or a plane, but he must have them. When necessary, perhaps his own haphazard research would come in handy, wouldn't it? Of course, a helicopter was out of the question. One wrong study could lead to a crash and an abrupt end to it. But a yacht, that was something he could research. Just as Lin Qin was indulging in visions of the future, a sharp ringtone interrupted his thoughts. Zhang Qian, his childhood friend and colleague. Seeing Zhang Qian's name again, Lin Qin raised his eyebrows, momentarily dazed. In his past life, Zhang Qian's fate was no better than his own. The moment the call connected, Zhang Qian's voice came through directly. Dude, you're doomed. You haven't been to the company for 2 days. The old witch found out you skipped work without asking for leave. She's furious in the office now, threatening to fire you. Not that I'm saying anything, but since when did you get so bold, not even asking for leave and just not coming to the company? However, he had almost forgotten that before the apocalypse began, he was just an ordinary office worker. His mind was solely on hoarding supplies and equipment, forgetting all about asking for leave. But with the apocalypse imminent and his life at stake, who cared about being fired or losing last month's salary? Compared to his life, these were trivial matters. Lin Qin hesitated for a moment, then with a touch of sentiment offered a reminder. He still couldn't bear to watch his good friend and childhood friend die unprepared. I quit the company. What? Since when did you have such guts? Are we bros or not? You didn't even tell me. Before the other party could finish, Lin Qin interrupted his voice directly. Lend me some money. Help me stock up on instant noodles, bread, and other instant foods. Just put them at your place. He'll come by to pick them up after I'm done with this. Zhang Qian was shocked. Why buy so many instant noodles and bread? Lin Qin, opening a shop. Zhang Qian, I see being your own boss now. All right, how much do you need? Lin Qin, as for the specific brands of bread, instant noodles, and drinks, you decide. Anyway, it's a snack shop, so at least 50 cases of inventory should do. There was silence on the other end of the line. 50 cases. Not to rain on your parade, but you just opened the shop and don't even know the customer flow yet. If you stock up this much and make a loss, what then? Maybe you should. Lin Qin, one word, are you helping or not? Zhang Qian, fine. After giving his instructions, Lin Qin hung up the phone. He didn't catch the rest of Zhang Qian's words. His attention was now entirely on a newly popped-up WeChat message. It was from the previous real estate agent Xiao Shui. Lin Qin glanced roughly at the house she sent and nodded in satisfaction. The house was located in the suburbs, but also far from bustling streets. Each villa was spaced 200 meters apart. Moreover, the housing density in this villa complex was extremely low, with only 20 households in total. The house was 300 square meters in total. The decoration was somewhat luxurious, but not cluttered, and the overall space was relatively large. Even if he needed to renovate later, there was plenty of room to work with. Most importantly, the basement was set up as a home theater with soundproofing already installed, which saved Lin Qin a lot of trouble. He immediately decided on this property. Especially after seeing the actual house, Lin Qin felt it was even more worth it. First, the distance between houses was sufficiently large, giving each villa plenty of activity space and abundant greenery. Second, the attached yard was roughly estimated to be about 50 square meters, perfect for installing solar panels. With only 4 days left, Lin Qin didn't have much time for major changes. He could only gain an edge through details. He first covered the walls with a thick layer of steel plates, then added an extra layer of ordinary bricks to make the original walls stronger, thicker, and higher. The retractable oxhide awning was not installed too high, it was slightly lower than the perimeter wall, perfectly covered. He had all the floor-to-ceiling windows knocked out, rebuilt the walls to leave only a normal-sized window, then embedded steel bars into the walls and combined them with steel door frames. As for the glass windows, Lin Qin chose tempered glass. After all, compared to ordinary glass windows, tempered glass has higher hardness, more stable performance, and a wider temperature range. Generally, it can withstand low temperatures down to 100 degrees Celsius and high temperatures up to 380 degrees Celsius. Of course, nothing is absolute. Lin Qin was extremely cautious and also installed a steel plate on the window that could be opened or closed at any time. In case the glass couldn't withstand an attack, there were still the steel bars and steel plates for support. The main door was treated the same way, replaced with a security door and a steel main door. This was to withstand zombie attacks. He also had workers prepare a secret escape door in the basement and on the third floor. The secret door was equipped with a bank vault-level lock, which only Lin Qin could open. For the stairs leading to the basement, Lin Qin had them walled up with bricks and steel plates, creating a hidden access door. He also had the workers modify the original ventilation ducts to allow air circulation and filtration in the basement. This way, even if the ground floor became unsafe, the basement would still be secure for Lin Qin. If absolutely necessary, he could still escape through the secret door in the basement. The final step was the overall insulation, heat preservation, and drainage of the villa. To be safe, Lin Qin hired construction teams from 3 different cities. Each team was only responsible for a part of the work. It would be hard for local construction teams not to trace him after the apocalypse began. But if they were from out of town, the zombies and distance would serve as a natural barrier. Overall, it was just thickening the walls, modifying doors and windows, installing an awning, creating secret doors, improving ventilation, adding insulation, and enhancing soundproofing and drainage. Nothing that could be considered a major renovation. The construction teams were working intensively. Lin Qin was not idle either. Besides receiving daily deliveries, he was also inquiring about channels to purchase weapons. But it had to be said, as an ordinary person, he didn't have as many channels as the wealthy. Apart from searching online, he really didn't dare to ask around. However, Lin Qin did manage to find one place: a shooting club. A shooting sports club on a certain platform. All real guns and live ammunition. The single-person package included 10 bullets and a Beretta 87 pistol. From the merchant's promotional video, Lin Qin also spotted CZ-512 Tactical STG-44, AK EM-3512, EM-332, CZ-75 Czech, and Alpha 2231 Czech revolvers. Without delay, Lin Qin eagerly checked the route. A 50-minute subway ride switching 3 lines. And assigned an instructor, Lin Qin was led into the shooting range. The pistol was secured by a chain. Lin Qin stood aside, holding protective gear, visibly excited. The instructor stood nearby, assembling bullets, loading the chamber, and releasing the safety catch. Each step meticulous, while personally guiding and demonstrating. Spread your legs apart, straighten your arms, lean forward, then close your left eye and aim with your right. Come on. The instructor returned the pistol to its original state and handed it to Lin Qin. Lin Qin took the pistol and put on the goggles. The instructor continued guiding from the side. Press the web of your right hand against it, align your sight, and aim for the center of the 10 ring. Good, that's right. Now put on your ear protection and prepare to shoot. The experience time for each firearm at the range was extremely short. After finishing with the Beretta, Lin Qin felt a lingering desire for more. According to the instructor, this gun had relatively low recoil and was lightweight, but it was certainly loud. Even with ear muffs, the echo of the gunfire still rang in his ears. For someone like him, who had never handled firearms before, this counted as an intensive training session. Immediately, Lin Qin purchased all the other firearm experience courses. In the end, he effortlessly replicated all the firearms. Weapons secured. This finally set Lin Qin's restless mind at ease. But the heat seemed to have arrived early. The temperature had already reached 40 degrees these past few days, and within 2 days, it would soar to 50 or 60 degrees. As for the house, 4 days and 3 nights. The construction team worked intensively and finally finished just in time. Lin Qin's tension brought on by the early heat wave finally eased. After settling the workers' final payment, Lin Qin began setting up surveillance cameras. These cameras were crucial, whether against malicious people or zombies when the apocalypse began. Lin Qin could know the safety situation around his home instantly, allowing him to take timely measures. The computer connected to the surveillance was placed in the basement and linked to his phone. Once anything got too close, the system would trigger an alert. Everything was ready. After days of rushing, he could finally lie down on the sofa and rest. Lin Qin opened WeChat, which he hadn't checked in a long time. A week's worth of messages, a string of greetings from his boss, inquiries from colleagues, party invitations from fair-weather friends, and group chats. Each of these messages had at least 20 or even 99 unread notifications. But Lin Qin didn't care about these people. He asked Zhang Qian about his food stockpile, told him to take the next day off to pick up supplies, and then opened Weibo to check the news. The virus had topped the trending list for days. Online, aside from complaints about the virus and hopes that the country would quickly develop a cure, there wasn't much panic. So far, no one had died from it. Lin Qin couldn't help but shake his head. The rain wouldn't affect the temperature. It was as if the bacterial culture had reached a tipping point. Those with only mild fever symptoms suddenly worsened. They began to zombify, biting anyone they saw. They had no thinking ability, no sense of pain, as if they were tireless. Even with broken limbs, they still followed their instinct to tear and bite. The head was their only weakness. With a rumble, thunder rolled outside, and a downpour arrived. By dawn the next day, everything would begin to change. Like any ordinary rain, no one noticed anything different. People busily shuttled through every corner of the city. Lin Qin opened the food delivery app and added fried chicken burgers and fries to his cart. Tender beef wufang and the juicy double-layer beef burger were his favorites. He ordered 3 buckets, a 6-day snack bucket, a fried chicken snack bucket, and a family bucket. Browsing the delivery app, Lin Qin couldn't help thinking about what else he needed. How about grilled cold noodles? What about spicy hot pot? Liangpi and meat sandwiches were also tempting. Pizza. He wanted that too. To be honest, he hadn't replicated these items. Lin Qin was torn. This was the last time he could order takeout. After this, he wouldn't be able to. Lin Qin didn't hesitate any longer and immediately swept through the shops to place orders. Soon he was eating fried chicken burgers and barbecue while drinking beer and watching a comedy variety show on TV. These weren't stockpiles, they were the latest popular shows and dramas. When the internet and power went out later, the large collection of movie U-discs and discs stored in his space would be his backup entertainment. Of course, there were also some thrilling videos. Full and tipsy, Lin Qin finally had a good night's sleep. Early the next morning, Lin Qin was woken by the buzzing vibration of his phone. Unlocking the screen, he saw it flooded with various news headlines and recommendations. Bus stop attacked by 3 strangers, leaving 2 injured, and rushed to hospital. Morning rush hour chaos, a collision on the overpass caused by a person acting strangely. Shocking. Subway station sees a frenzied biter, drug-induced hallucination, or zombie. Lin Qin, still groggy, glanced at a few headlines and unlocked the screen casually. He had anticipated all this. On Weibo and Douyin, various videos shot by on-site witnesses were uploaded. In the footage, chaos reigned. A person fiercely bit down on another, tearing off large chunks of flesh. Some had their bodies pierced, intestines and blood mixed on the ground. The crowd screamed and scattered as the zombies turned and lunged at the people. Lin Qin turned on the TV. The news channel was broadcasting the sudden incident live. The injured have been sent to nearby hospitals for treatment. In response to this emergency, local authorities have set up a special task force to investigate and maintain order at the scene. Our reporters have also rushed to the front line. Next, the anchor continued vividly. Lin Qin glanced at it and turned off the TV. The following scenes might ruin his appetite for breakfast. Some of the injured sent to hospitals turned into zombies on the spot, while others did so en route. A small number made it to the hospital, but they would soon zombify there, turning the entire hospital into a zombie stronghold. The police dispatched to the scene were surrounded by zombies halfway. With the virus outbreak and its high transmissibility, the city quickly fell. The government took emergency measures, ordering people to stay home and wait for rescue. The apocalypse had truly begun now. But none of this affected Lin Qin. Lin Qin rose. As usual, he brushed his teeth and washed his face, then enjoyed his breakfast. The breakfast consisted of pan-fried beef buns, fried dough sticks, and soy milk accompanied by pickled vegetables. It was a replica of the breakfast sold at the stall near the shared apartment complex where he had previously lived. The taste was quite palatable. After finishing his meal, Lin Qin turned on the television again. The scene on the screen was the complete opposite of what had just been shown. A news reporter was reporting in front of the camera when a zombie leaped directly onto his back, sinking its teeth deeply into his neck. The reporter had no means of defense, and the harrowing screams of the carnage echoed in everyone's ears. The cameraman had long since abandoned the camera and fled. Yet in the final frame, one could still see him being tackled by a sprinting zombie. The news feed cut off abruptly, and the anchor was visibly flustered. Afterward, the news broadcast ceased entirely. It wasn't difficult to deduce what had transpired. A slightly urgent buzzing sound came from his phone. Lin Qin glanced at it and answered with remarkable composure, holding the phone a bit away from his ear. Damn, you're a prophet. It's total chaos out here. Lucky I took your advice yesterday and asked for leave to help you move supplies, or I'd be dead at the office today. Lin Qin, my man, you're my savior. Lin Qin's eye twitched. The remark inevitably reminded him of a certain infamous scene. Don't gross me out. All right. But with all this chaos outside, what about your stuff at my place? Maybe you shouldn't come today. Wait until things calm down. I mean, your stuff is taking up all the space in my apartment, but when this is over, you owe me a huge feast. Zhang Qian stood by the window looking down at the chaotic crowd and the pileup of cars on the street. His face was deeply furrowed. Lin Qin, however, remained utterly unperturbed. It had been an excuse from the start. Zhang Qian said, "Have you seen what's happening outside? The streets are in utter pandemonium, filled with screams." Lin Qin replied, "I saw. And he had been prepared for it. You should stay home for the next few days. Your company will probably announce work from home soon. Keep an eye on the news." Zhang Qian said, "Don't worry, I've already seen it. You take care." They ended the conversation hastily. Lin Qin couldn't help but walk to the window and look outside. This villa district was far from the bustling city center with very few people around, so it wasn't as chaotic as what had been on the news. However, this tranquility wouldn't last long. Lin Qin returned to his room and turned on his computer. On the first day, utilities like the internet and electricity were still functioning. Some online games could still be played normally. He launched a game, quickly found a match, and entered a ranked game, winning 3 stars in a row. A loud crash made him look up instinctively. A luxury car had crashed into a roadside tree. Lin Qin picked up his binoculars to get a better look. The car sat quietly on the road within the compound, its hood slightly smoking. A security guard drawn by the noise came to investigate and inexplicably opened the car door. The next second, a zombie inside lunged and sank its teeth into the guard's neck. A scream pierced the air. Lin Qin raised an eyebrow and put down the binoculars. He then resumed his game. Such incidents would only become more frequent from now on. It was hardly a novelty in an apocalypse, but eventually finding a living soul would become the real challenge. Nightfall arrived quickly. After a full day of gaming, Lin Qin's eyes were strained and sore. The zombie threat had already spread to this 20-villa compound, but that was of little concern to him. Lin Qin secured the reinforced iron gate of his courtyard to prevent any accidents. He also kept an eye on online discussions. User Sky High, it's over. Real zombies have appeared. This isn't going to be like an apocalypse novel, is it? User Legless Cuttlefish, the whole neighborhood is full of zombies. I'm too scared to go out. This is my first time experiencing something like this. User Hard Work Late Sleep, staying home is safest. But in this situation, we should still trust the government. User Full Today, I doubt it. The government might not be able to handle it either. There were only a few this morning, but now the People's Hospital is completely overrun. A huge number of zombies came from there. User Bridge Ahead, let's wait and see. It's hard to say for sure. Staying home is definitely safer than going out. User Little Black Dragon, I agree. User Wang Giftbox, go check Yangshi News Weibo right now. Curiosity piqued by the comments under the Weibo post, Lin Qin went to check it out. At that moment, the top pinned Weibo post announced that citizens should take shelter at home and refrain from going out. The government would take action as soon as possible and urge the public to stay indoors and await rescue. Scrolling through the comments, Lin Qin saw the most upvoted messages. They all expressed trust in the nation. Major news networks were sharing the post simultaneously. But related topics like zombies and the apocalypse were already spreading like wildfire. Besides the usual jokes and expressions of trust in the government, digging deeper, Lin Qin found some other voices. For instance, concerns about food sources at home, daily necessities, and when things would return to normal. After all, everything had happened too fast. There were no contingency plans. Lin Qin glanced casually. In such a sudden crisis, some were just spectators while others were panicking. However, Lin Qin also noticed a few rather surprising posts. Someone was actually asking about the tea influenza. User Little Pot, I don't know if you've noticed, but several people I know who were infected with the tea flu have turned into zombies. Could this whole thing be related to that? Lin Qin raised an eyebrow and clicked on the comment section. There were only 2 replies, both telling him not to worry, that it was impossible. After a moment's thought, Lin Qin replied, User Thunder Cuttlefish, it's not impossible. But the government should trace the source soon. Maybe it is because of the tea flu virus. After replying, Lin Qin continued browsing casually. In just one day, major companies, as if following orders, had successively announced work-from-home policies. Relevant authorities were also urgently intervening. The streets were cleared of people in no time except for the zombies roaming outside. It felt like a ghost town. The usual sounds of people moving about, car horns, and various noises had vanished. Lin Qin ate his meals as usual while turning on Mango TV to watch the latest variety show. The first day was relatively normal. Every household, whether they cooked or not, had some food stockpile. By the 4th day, new situations began to emerge. Conversations in various group chats gradually shifted to begging for food. Lin Qin looked at his group messages, which included neighbors from the apartment building where he used to live. They were helping each other out within the group. Witnessing this, Lin Qin could only shake his head, uttering nothing. The kindness shown now would before long turn into the very executioners that would slay them. Food would only grow scarcer. The zombies would only multiply. When true desperation struck, no one would abide by the law. Take the present moment, for instance. Someone was ing him in the group chat. The villa district where Lin Qin resided housed only 20 households. Given their remote location and fear of venturing out, the group had long since begun trading food among themselves. But the wealthy never kept leftovers overnight, nor did they stock up on more than 3 or 4 days' worth of supplies at a time. They only ate fresh food. Without early exchanges of provisions, how could they have lasted so many days? Tang Xiaoyan Lin Qin, bro, do you have any extra food at home? I'm willing to buy some. I have a child at home and truly have no other choice. Wan Qinyao Lin Qin, if you have any, could you spare me a little? Zhang Cheng Lin Qin, young man, I'll pay double the price for your food. Sell it to me. Lin Zheng Lin Qin, in the boss of Yuan Phone Group. Give the food to me. Help me now, and once this is over, I'll give you a monthly salary of 5,000 and a job at my company. The group chat seemed to have found a glimmer of hope, and in an instant everyone's eyes were fixed on Lin Qin. Lin Qin thought back carefully. He had only been in this group for 4 days and hadn't even brought all his belongings. He had never flaunted large bags of supplies in front of anyone, had he? Especially this Lin Zheng. Before the apocalypse, that salary would have been quite tempting. But from now on there would be no Yuan Phone Group, no boss. Money had become nothing but worthless paper. As the messages piled up, some even began sending friend requests. Lin Qin bit into a piece of beef jerky, then finally spoke up. Lin Qin, I'm really sorry, I just moved in and haven't even finished unpacking most of my things. Lin Qin, to be honest, I've been worrying these past few days. Does anyone have leftover soup from instant noodles or vegetable broth? Just a mouthful would do. As soon as the message was sent, the group fell silent. It was as if they had completely ignored Lin Qin. A person with no value to offer brought them no benefit. Lin Qin finally had some peace. Closing the group chat, he saw a WeChat message from Zhang Qian. Zhang Qian, I'm going to open a few packs of your food to fill my stomach. Zhang Qian, can't go out now, the food at home is all gone. Only your supplies are left. Lin Qin, go ahead, it's your money that bought it anyway. Lin Qin, but let me remind you, hide your food. Don't expose it, don't be a saint and give it away, and don't sell. Once he revealed that he had plenty of food, he would only be coveted by countless people, and then the consequences need not be elaborated. But Lin Qin knew the character of his childhood friend well. Occasionally he would head to the basement gym or the media room to indulge in visual feasts. Outside, the world had turned upside down, but occasionally he would head to the basement gym or the media room to indulge in visual feasts. Outside, the world had turned upside down, but Lin Qin remained unaffected by the apocalypse. On the 7th day, the nation finally made a move. Major news outlets simultaneously published the same report, sparking widespread discussion online. Fellow citizens, it is with deep regret that we inform you, according to research by multiple national departments, including biochemistry and disease control, the zombie-like incidents in major cities are caused by the evolution of the T influenza virus. In all blood sample tests, we have detected the presence of the T virus. Tests on blood samples from uninfected individuals have all shown no trace of the T virus. The common conclusion is all zombified individuals have the T virus in their bodies, while uninfected humans. With heavy hearts, we have decided to release this information. The T virus is the zombie virus. Finally, we remind the public, zombies have weakened vision, but an exceptionally keen sense of smell, reacting strongly to fresh blood. If you are injured and bleeding, bandage the wound properly and avoid exposing it to the air to prevent attracting zombies. If unavoidable, enclosed spaces are known to reduce the sensitivity of their sense of smell. Please remember this and take necessary precautions. Currently, it is known that zombies also have extremely sensitive hearing, though the exact extent is unclear. However, they react strongly to distinct sounds like bird calls, faint collisions, and conversations. Comparable to the hearing of animals like cats and dogs, zombies are highly sensitive to sound and can clearly hear noises that human ears might miss. Therefore, when staying at home, please be cautious and avoid making loud noises that might attract their attention. Additionally, in the early stages, zombies move sluggishly and stiffly, but their strength is still twice that of an ordinary person. Once engaged, it is difficult to break free. Moreover, when they lock onto a target, their attack speed increases significantly. Thus, avoid physical struggles with zombies. Only through strategy can you survive. Our research is still incomplete. Zombies may exhibit other uncontrollable phenomena, but the head is their fatal weak point. Destroying the head and brain can completely kill them. Unless absolutely necessary, stay home, remain quiet, and do not go out. Any bite or scratch from a zombie will result in infection. Depending on the wound and source of infection, the infection period can range from 10 seconds to 24 hours. Finally, we regret to inform you that no effective treatment has been developed yet, but our team is still working diligently on a cure. Also, citizens need not panic excessively. The nation is urgently mobilizing to devise the fastest rescue plans. Rest assured, all departments are closely coordinating to plan defense constructions and personnel relocation. In 3 days, ground forces will conduct rescue operations in lightly infected areas. In 7 days, helicopter airlifts and ground forces will simultaneously rescue moderately infected areas. In 15 days, some severely affected areas will be patrolled by helicopters at high altitudes. Residents are advised to move to high rooftops so that helicopter search teams can mark your positions for airlift rescue. Note: due to a severe shortage of personnel, daily search frequencies and ranges have been maximized. Some restricted areas will receive airdrop supplies to extend rescue time. During this period, we will conduct batch supply drops. The first airdrop list includes drinking water, biscuits, bread, and other survival food items. Due to inventory, packaging, and transportation, the first drop will begin in 10 days. Next, information regarding the infection status of each district will be released. Residents of all provinces and cities are requested to save and review the details according to their respective locations so as not to miss specific regional classifications, material distribution, rescue timing, and other issues. Additionally, the emergency radio frequencies are notified as follows: National Unified Emergency Communication Frequencies for UV bands, UBand 433, 000 MHz, 433, 500 MHz, 438, 500 MHz. List of provincial and municipal emergency broadcast frequencies: BJ City, FM 103, 9 TJ City, FM 106, 8 SH City, FM 105, 7 Anhui, FM 90, 8 Nanjing, FM 103. 3. Please remember the emergency communication frequencies according to your own provinces and cities. Next, Lin Qin watched the news feeling little impact. The measures taken by the state were extremely swift, even anticipating contingency plans for subsequent power and network outages. However, the difficulty and timing of rescue operations became the greatest issue. Moreover, the first wave of rescue would begin from the least affected areas after 3 days, then proceed to medium zones, and finally, to the severely affected regions. Lin Qin's location was in the suburbs, but his city was classified within the severely affected area. Consequently, rescue had not yet arrived. This place had already become a living hell. Without food and facing the terror brought by zombies, more and more people decided to take desperate risks to survive and moreover to live until the arrival of the rescue date. Lin Qin exited the news and then began to prepare. Tonight was not going to be a peaceful night. As dusk had just fallen, Lin Qin spotted a neighbor from the next house venturing out to search for food through his installed surveillance. The man skulked along the paths within the residential area, occasionally hiding among the roadside vegetation. Only after ensuring safety would he proceed further. This man was very cautious. Lin Qin sipped his coffee with interest, constantly switching between surveillance devices to track him, until he saw the man stop in front of another villa, nimbly climbing over the wall and entering. Lin Qin set down his coffee. In no more than 10 minutes, the man who had just climbed into the villa emerged carrying a bag of food. He looked around, then carefully returned to his own villa. Meanwhile, at the other end of the villa district, similar event. However, that person was not as fortunate as this one. No sooner had he stepped out than a wandering zombie sank its teeth firmly into his shoulder. A scream of agony echoed across the entire villa district, attracting numerous zombies. From the surveillance, the zombies lurking in the shadows could be seen scrambling toward the sound one after another. They tore at the man on the ground, biting him alive. This scene was utterly commonplace for Lin Qin, but for the two women in the villa, it was a visual shock. They tightly covered their mouths, hiding behind the door, not daring to make a sound. They watched helplessly as their father was gradually devoured by the zombies. Watching this, Lin Qin lowered his head. He seemed to be feeling a bit hungry. Never mind, he thought, let's see what's good. How about spicy blood curd and boiled sliced pork and chili sauce? Those two dishes are spicy and flavorful, not bad. He decided on them. Coming up from the basement, Lin Qin surveyed the layout of the first floor and found the kitchen. He heated up the two dishes in the pot and ate them with fragrant steamed rice. Compared to the outside, Lin Qin's life was quite comfortable. He didn't turn up the TV volume too high. It mingled with the occasional screams and cries for help coming from the monitors. Having eaten and drunk his fill, Lin Qin planned to lie in the bedroom, scroll through some videos, and go to sleep early. Otherwise, the noisy commotion outside early tomorrow morning would make it hard to sleep. Before going to bed, Lin Qin lay down and opened his chat page with Zhang Qian. That guy had been sending him messages intermittently since 5 o'clock. 1707. How are you doing now? 1720. Still alive. 1725. Damn it, reply to me when you see this, or I'll think you've kicked the bucket. 1726. Bro. 1801. You haven't really turned into a zombie, have you? There were quite a few more messages after that. Probably assuming Lin Qin was in grave danger, Zhang Qian had started getting sentimental. So much nonsense. Lin Qin didn't bother reading through all his drivel. He moved his fingers to reply. Still alive. Zhang Qian, as if he had been glued to his phone, responded immediately. Zhang Qian, great, I thought you were done for. Zhang Qian, Lin Qin, you have no idea what I went through today. Honestly, I'm a bit scared right now. Zhang Qian, today I saw my neighbor get killed by other residents in the building. Zhang Qian, he used to share food with neighbors in the group chat, but today I saw his whole family get killed with my... Zhang Qian, Right before my eyes, you know. Zhang Qian, a family of 4 all thrown out of the window downstairs. Luckily I hid in time and wasn't spotted, but this whole thing is still too shocking for me. Zhang Qian, outside there are zombies everywhere and the neighbors in the complex are full of uncertainty. Zhang Qian, do you think I can survive until the rescue arrives? Lin Qin could clearly sense the fear in Zhang Qian's words. The terror brought by zombies compounded by the dread from the neighbors. No matter who it was in such a dire environment, they would be afraid. Lin Qin could only offer comfort. Keep your security door locked, stay inside, and don't stick your head out, and you'll be fine. You can make it to the rescue. In his past life, Zhang Qian had survived until the rescue, and the trajectory, this time, shouldn't change much. Zhang Qian, but that kind-hearted family next door is already dead. Zhang Qian didn't finish his sentence. But Lin Qin understood what he meant. For now, such incidents were indeed shocking. But as time went on, these events would only become more frequent, not less. Moreover, in the later stages, one would still have to be wary of the zombies. Lin Qin paused for a moment, then said, "Your air conditioner has been running." Zhang Qian nodded, then realizing Lin Qin couldn't see him, replied, "Yeah, the damn weather outside is scorching hot. If I don't turn on the AC, my place turns into a sauna. But why are you asking about this? Got some clever trick, or?" Before Zhang Qian could finish, Lin Qin interrupted with a grave expression. "Zhang Qian, that murderer probably saw you." There was an eerie silence between them for a while. Then Zhang Qian slowly spoke, "Lin Qin, don't scare me." "Lin Qin, I'm not trying to scare you." After thinking for a moment, Lin Qin added, "Tell me, do you have any handy weapons at home? Knives, clubs, axes, something like that." Zhang Qian, "Well, I do have some, but you're not asking me to kill someone, are you?" Zhang Qian, No, I've always been a law-abiding citizen. Asking me to kill a person, that's way too hard." Zhang Qian, "Killing a zombie would be more like it." Lin Qin, "That works too, just treat it like killing zombies." Zhang Qian, No, let's forget it. Don't be fooled by my bold talk. I'm all bark and no bite. I'm afraid I'd be taken down before I even face a zombie, let alone a human. Lin Qin, Zhang Qian, if you want to survive, you have to take this step. I'm not saying now, but you need to start adapting. This is a completely different era from before, understand? Lin Qin, if that killer comes for you, will you just wait to die? Zhang Qian, Lin Qin, don't sleep too soundly tonight. Lock your doors and windows and find a proper weapon. They talked for a while longer, finally calming Zhang Qian's panic. Lin Qin also advised him to fill every container with water and charge all devices fully. Tomorrow morning the water plant would explode, cutting off all tap water. The day after, electricity would be completely shut down. As for the network and signal towers, the connection was still there, but intermittent and weaker than before. Complete network outages occurred mostly in areas that were already poorly covered. Of course, later on, even the network would be entirely cut off. Zhang Qian didn't argue and obediently followed the instructions. Lin Qin claimed there was plenty of food left in the shop, enough for Zhang Qian to survive until rescue arrived. After handling Zhang Qian's matters, Lin Qin turned off his phone and went to sleep. At 5 a.m., a massive explosion jolted everyone awake. Flames soared into the sky and thick black smoke shrouded half the horizon. Many stared in confusion at the distance. Only Lin Qin, after waking, turned over and fell back asleep. Meanwhile, people gradually discovered that their water supply had been cut off. Messages in various groups spread rapidly, growing more and more absurd. It wasn't until news of the water plant explosion broke that the absurd rumors began to fade. But panic gripped everyone relentlessly. Lin Qin got up to brush his teeth and wash his face. Perhaps it was his imagination, but overnight it seemed there were more zombies in the neighborhood. For instance, 3 zombies were now wandering right below his building. In the distance, a scattered 5 or 6 more zombies roamed. Upon closer inspection, Lin Qin realized he recognized 2 of them. The zombie closest to him was the security guard who had been infected at the entrance, still wearing his uniform. The other one, with its expensive shirt and suit now tattered, was likely the homeowner who had bitten someone that day. Both had wandered over to his area. After observing the zombies' grotesque faces without a flicker of emotion, Lin Qin finished brushing his teeth and washing his face, then headed to the kitchen on the first floor. He boiled eggs in a pot, while steaming 2 fresh pork buns, 1 pickled vegetable bun, and warming a cup of soy milk above. Then, wearing slippers, Lin Qin sat down at the dining table in the living room, waiting for the water to boil for about 10 minutes before eating. The wait wasn't long, so Lin Qin idly scrolled through videos on his phone. In just a few days, all major social platforms were flooded with videos about the zombie apocalypse. Various clips of zombies tearing into humans fueled even more tension. In the past, such inflammatory videos would have been taken down immediately, not a single one allowed to surface. But now there was no one to care about that. Lin Qin swiped through a few videos and stumbled upon a familiar face, his boss from that lousy company, Wan Qinya. In the video, the woman looked terrified, her face barely visible in the dimly lit room as she aimed her camera at the zombies roaming outside. The screams of a man being mauled by a zombie horde echoed in the background, a horrifying scene that followed the camera as it slid to the window. It's terrifying. The whole street is full of zombies. I've been stuck at home for days and my food is gone. If I don't go out, I'll starve to death. I don't want to die, and I don't want to be bitten by zombies. Is anyone nearby who can help me? They'll do anything to... Below the video, many shared her sentiment, but more comments came from men making crude jokes. For example, Farmer and Snake. Don't be afraid, come to Big Brother, it'll protect you. Huang Tongji. Pretty lady, come closer, Big Brother is strong and fit. Chong Gubu Chong. You seem close by, beautiful. How about coming over to warm up with Big Brother? Lin Qin glanced at the comments, but his eyes caught a line at the bottom, 500 meters from you. 500 meters. Could she be in the same neighborhood? The first thought that crossed Lin Qin's mind was Wan Qinya, who had briefly appeared in the group chat. Could it be such a coincidence? He clicked into her profile and found several borderline videos. Wow. Who would have thought that someone who always seemed so aloof would make such suggestive content? Each video had around 1,000 likes. Not many, but the comments were plentiful, full of drooling admirers. And Wan Qianya's replies were equally provocative. Intrigued, Lin Qin began scrolling through her older videos. If such content had been discovered by the company before, it would have caused an uproar. To be fair, Wan Qianya's videos were... She had a fiery, curvaceous figure. The deliberate atmosphere she created in the videos with her swaying movements starkly contrasted with her usual stern demeanor. It was indeed alluring. Lin Qin couldn't help but wonder what it would be like if Wan Qinya displayed such a side in front of him. The image of his proud, beautiful boss turning passionate and fiery beneath him. Lin Qin's heart raced, his breathing quickening. He couldn't dwell on it. He clicked into the private chat and received an automated reply. Auto reply: Yao Yao Bu Yao, want to know more about my preferences? Add my WeChat to see exclusive clips, Lin Qin. The implication was far too tantalizing. The restless feeling he had just managed to suppress surged back. With a snap, Lin Qin closed the video. Stay calm. What use were women in the apocalypse? They'd only slow down your draw. The aroma of steamed buns filled the room, and Lin Qin got up to check. He took the food out of the pot, eating the buns and drinking the soy milk, while putting on his Bluetooth earbuds to watch a variety show, trying to quell the fire stirred within him. Outside, the zombies' howls persisted. In contrast to Lin Qin's peaceful scene, things weren't so good on the other side of the villa district. The property management staff and security guards were holed up in a two-story cottage within the villa complex. This was their usual workplace. The space was sparse, containing little more than office desks and computers. The last meal had been consumed that morning, leaving only a single bottle of mineral water. With the water plant destroyed, this bottle had become exceedingly precious. Survival was imperative. But first, the immediate crisis had to be addressed. In the hall, several people frantically cleaned up the shattered glass on the floor, while others peered nervously through the windows at the surging zombies outside. Hurry, hurry, the zombies are coming. Yang Shui's voice rang out as she directed everyone. Abandoning the broken glass, the group scrambled to hide in a panic. Outside, the zombies had gathered before the main entrance on the first floor, slamming against the door with relentless force. The 4 people hiding on the second floor remained tense, not daring to make a sound. This state persisted for over 10 minutes, until the zombies below were gradually lured away by screams in the distance. Only then did the group relax their vigilance. They exchanged glances, but no one dared to go downstairs to assess the situation. Yang Gao looked at Lu Daqing, who had broken the glass, with an air of indifference. You caused this mess, you go check it out. Lu Daqing stammered, fine. He'll go. Summoning his courage, he nervously descended to the first floor. The glass in the windows had long been shattered, and the security bars hung precariously. Even the sole door was riddled with holes. If another wave of zombies were attracted, this place would be indefensible. Fortunately, the zombies had been drawn away by the noise outside, ceasing their assault for now. But there was no guarantee they wouldn't return. Treading carefully back to the second floor, Lu Daqing faced the group's eyes and said nervously, the security bars and door on the first floor won't hold much longer. We need to find a safer place quickly. It's all your fault. You can't even hold a cup steady. If you'd really attracted the zombies, we'd all be dead. Yang Gao in his property management uniform glared angrily at Lu Daqing, who wore a security guard's attire. Lu Daqing apologized profusely. I'm sorry. It was a slip of the hand. I didn't mean it. And the zombies didn't get in, did they? Yang Gao's voice rose with fury. Isn't that enough? Do you want to lure all the zombies here so we all get bitten to death? Lu Daqing retorted. How can you talk like that? You. Zhang Chongming, who had been silent for a long time, interrupted. Enough. Do you think we're not loud enough? If you want to argue, go outside and do it. Don't drag the rest of us into this. Though anger simmered within them, both fell silent, saying no more. Yang Shui spoke up from the side. All right, let's figure out what to do next. You've all seen the zombies outside. There's no food here either. Maybe we can stay at another owner's place for a while until rescue arrives. Unlike the relatively calm Yang Gao, Lu Daqing spoke in a less fluent Mandarin. At a time like this, it's not about which owner will take us in. It's about how we can safely leave here and find a place with food and security. All eyes turned to Lu Daqing. He was right. They urgently needed a safe location with provisions. But across the entire villa complex, who had enough food to spare? Moreover, the thought of venturing out brought the recent zombie scenes flooding back. For a moment, everyone fell silent. The possibility of leaving seemed daunting. Yet staying put meant. Yang Shui pondered for a long while, then suddenly thought of Lin Qin, the tenant whose renovation had been completed in just 7 days. Maybe we can find someone. There's a new tenant who moved in a few days ago. We can't afford to offend the other owners, but that tenant is fair. Besides, I saw his yard from a distance once. It's been reinforced and seems quite safe. With a plan in mind, the 3 property management staff began frantically pinging Lin Qin. Yang Shui property, Lin Qin. Mr. Lin, we noticed during your renovation that you reinforced and thickened your walls and gate. Given the severe situation outside, would you be willing to shelter us in your home while we wait for rescue? Yang Shui property, the situation is dire with more zombies appearing each day. Yesterday, zombies broke into one owner's home and the entire family was lost. Your house with its reinforced yard seems much safer. Together we might hold out until help arrives. Zhang Chongming were trapped at the property office, which is quite close to you. Yang Gao, Lin Qin brother, in times of great disaster we're all struggling. Letting us stay at your place for a few days isn't a big deal, is it? Why the silence? Messages in the group continued. Other owners, though unaware of the specifics, trusted the property management's judgment and echoed the request, hoping to gather at Lin Qin's home. Dozens of pings flooded the screen. Lin Qin remained unmoved, not even bothering to reply. Yang Shui stared at the empty screen, lost in thought. Before the apocalypse began, Lin Qin, the tenant, had moved in abruptly. While tenant turnover was common, the problem was that Lin Qin had modified his courtyard walls. All renovation applications required property management approval. Though the details were unclear, the daily delivery of materials through the main gate, along with occasional glimpses she had caught, had initially struck her as odd. After all, the wealthy often had peculiar tastes. Perhaps he simply disliked the standard low walls. Originally, she had planned to demand corrective action, as villa walls had to be uniform. But before she could confront him about forced removal, the zombie outbreak occurred. Now it seemed incredibly safe. Lin Qin's house was arguably the most secure place here. Yet even under such bombardment, he had not responded. The property staff and security began to wonder if Lin Qin was still alive. At a loss, they contemplated their options. With the zombies multiplying outside, they had to find a safer refuge. But would going to Lin Qin's really be safe? And even if it was, what about food? For someone who had just moved in, supplies were likely depleted. Perhaps he had already become a meal for the zombies. Yang Shui slapped her thigh decisively. No matter what situation this homeowner is in right now, they are our top priority. Lu Daqing couldn't help but pour cold water on the idea, remarking coolly, "Did you see if they replied to you?" With so many messages, any normal person would have responded by now. They might have already been bitten by zombies and died. This place is safer than there. At least we haven't had any zombies sneaking in here. Everyone was left speechless. Lin Qin was deeply engrossed in watching a variety show. Just then his phone began to vibrate incessantly. The occasional vibrations were really affecting his viewing experience. After glancing at it and seeing it wasn't important information, Lin Qin directly set his phone to do not disturb mode. The variety show he was watching was quite amusing, but unfortunately the apocalypse had started before it could finish airing. It seemed there wouldn't be another episode. After finishing breakfast, Lin Qin leisurely opened his phone. As he turned off do not disturb mode, dozens of WeChat messages popped up instantly. A quick glance showed that the property management was simply delusional. Who would open their door to let strangers into their home at a time like this? Lin Qin rolled his eyes. However, to his surprise, Wan Qinya had privately messaged him. It seemed she was also quite surprised to find him in this residential complex. At 910, Wan Qinya, Lin Qin. How come you're here? Is it true what the property management said about your place being safe? We're old colleagues, why don't you come pick me up? At 930, my phone is almost out of battery, reply to me quickly, so we can at least have some company. Hey, reply to me. Lin Qin. Some time had passed since the messages were sent. Lin Qin's mind immediately conjured up images of Wan Qianya's secret social media account, which was a stark contrast to her usual stern demeanor at work, a completely different alluring side. Lin Qin cleared his throat, but still refused. No matter how enticing a woman might be, it wasn't worth taking the risk. The zombies outside were lying in wait, ready to pounce. There was no way he was going out to get her. Lin Qin, Director Wan. Coming to my place would be too much of a downgrade for you. I think you'd be better off staying home and figuring out how to save yourself. Of course, you could also try killing zombies. After replying, Lin Qin didn't bother with her anymore. Before long, more and more people would be forced to go out in search of food. Wan Qinya was no exception. If she wanted to survive, she would have to go out. By then, even his own house wouldn't be completely safe. He needed to activate the external electric fence to prevent anyone from climbing over the wall into his yard. After all the commotion the property management had caused, everyone in the villa area knew his place was secure. Lin Qin didn't want to be constantly on people's minds. After activating the external electric fence, he stood by the second-floor window and looked outside. The streets were empty, a chaotic mess from being unattended for so long. Zombies shuffled mechanically along the road, their faces expressionless and vacant. Birds perched on the treetops chirped noisily while a crowd of hideous zombies gathered below. Near the lawn not far away, the flesh torn by zombies under the scorching heat attracted a swarm of flies and insects. Occasionally some birds could be seen pecking at the shreds of flesh on the ground. A hot wind blew, carrying a mix of rotting stench into Lin Qin's nostrils. It was quite unpleasant. Lin Qin acted as if he hadn't smelled anything, continuing to observe the situation across the street. Opposite the villa area was another upscale residential complex, but just by looking he couldn't tell much. After all, every household was now afraid to make any loud noises. Lin Qin was no exception. The floors of his room were covered with carpets, so walking didn't make much sound. Although his house had been modified, it was only a basic 7-day version. To be completely free from fear of the zombies outside, it would take at least a month or half a year of long-term work. Whenever he watched TV or played games, Lin Qin would only go to the basement. The basement was soundproofed, effectively blocking out all noise. After confirming there were no anomalies around, Lin Qin took out some fruit and an iced cola from his storage space. The weather was sweltering, a fruit, ice cream, and cola were the perfect combination for a scorching summer day. Lin Qin turned off the air conditioning on the ground floor and went down to the basement where he switched on the massive The media room was his own renovation. The large TV that was originally in the living room had been moved here. The front wall held a movie screen, while the LCD TV was behind it. Neither interfered with the other. He took some fruit out of his storage space, washed them clean, and had just sat down to. With an urgent vibration, Wan Qinya sent a video call request directly. Lin Qin took a slow, deliberate bite of an apple before answering the call. The screen flickered on instantly. Wan Qianya's figure appeared before Lin Qin. Ignoring the somewhat dim scene on Lin Qin's, and she launched into a rapid-fire monologue. Lin Qin, you finally answered. Which building are you in? The woman on the screen, devoid of her usual meticulous makeup, looked panicked, her eyes darting nervously toward the tightly shut door. Lin Qin tilted his head. You want to come to my place? What else? It's really unsafe outside now. See if you live far from me. If not, I'll just move into your place so we can keep each other company. I'll take what you said earlier as concern. I'm not going to be picky now. I'll feel safer with you nearby. Oh, do you have any food? I've run out at my place. I've been hungry all day. I'll get ready and come over now. Lin Qin was speechless. He had seen thick-skinned people before, but never anyone this audacious. Even if he were to save someone, it wouldn't be her. Why don't you pull back your curtains first and take a look at the zombies outside? Do you think you can make it here safely? Even if you did make it, why would I take you in? Our relationship wasn't exactly good before. After all, Wan Qinya hadn't earned the nickname Old Witch for nothing. Lin Qin had been on the receiving end of her vicious scoldings before. Besides, even if he did want a woman, it would never be Wan Qinya. After all, who would want someone older? Of course, in the past, being kept by an older, wealthy woman was quite desirable, but that wasn't the case anymore. As for food, he had some, quite a lot in fact. He was eating an apple right now. Lin Qin took a bite of his apple and swallowed it under Wan Qianya's shocked gaze. Wan Qianya was overjoyed. Not bad, you even have apples to eat. He'll get ready and come find you right now. Before she could finish, Lin Qin hung up the video call with a click. Sitting on the sofa, Lin Qin began to ponder. He had been rather lethargic these past few days. He felt neither the tension of the apocalypse nor the urge to train himself. It was as if he was compensating for his past life. But after indulging for so long, it was time to start training. After all, it wouldn't stay this safe forever, and this body was vastly different from the one he had in his previous life. He had to recover his past life's combat prowess as quickly as possible. Lin Qin finished his apple. He clapped his hands and walked over to the exercise equipment to begin his workout. The initial session was not intense and ended soon after. When he retrieved his phone, Lin Qin discovered that Wan Qinya had bombarded him with numerous video messages, texts, and calls. She must have been cursing him fiercely on the other end. However, Lin Qin paid it no mind and directly blocked and deleted her. Just as he finished, the surveillance system suddenly sounded an alarm. He instinctively walked over and checked the monitors. On the ground outside the perimeter wall, 2 people who had touched the electric fence lay twitching, only to be devoured by approaching zombies. From the fragmented images, he could still make out the uniforms of the property management staff. Lin Qin frowned, then switched through the various cameras to get a clearer picture of the situation. Over 10 minutes ago, Yang Shui and the others had set out from the property management office. Taking advantage of the zombies being drawn away by the commotion outside, they climbed out of a back window and proceeded with relative caution. At first, they encountered no zombies. But halfway there, they were forced to hide in the greenery, too afraid to venture out. At the intersection ahead, 3 zombies were voraciously feeding on a corpse. The scent of blood in the air and the gruesome sight rendered the 4 of them utterly silent. Even so, Yang Shui's physiological reaction was unavoidable. She fought back the urge to vomit, but a faint sound still escaped her, drawing the zombies' attention. The 4 of them fled in a desperate sprint through the villa district, pursued by the undead. This, however, attracted more zombies from other areas. In an instant, they were surrounded. Panic-stricken, the 4 tightened their grips on their weapons and engaged in a life-or-death struggle with the zombies. Yang Gao pushed Yang Shui into the horde, and she was immediately set upon and torn apart by the zombies. Beside them, Zhang Chongming tried the same tactic on Lu Daqing, but he was not as fortunate as Yang Gao. His attempt to harm another backfired, and he was the one shoved into the swarm. The remaining 2 seized the moment of distraction to flee in a panic. They ran all the way to the wall outside Lin Qin's courtyard. Seeing it, they thought they had found hope, unaware that the electric fence was activated. As soon as they climbed up and touched it, they were instantly electrocuted and rendered unconscious. The pursuing zombies arrived and feasted on the ready prey. In the surveillance feed, dozens of zombies snarled and gorged themselves relentlessly. Blood splattered against the corner of Lin Qin's wall, a ghastly sight. He turned off the monitor and scratched his head. It was fortunate the electric fence had been activated beforehand, or else intruders might have slipped in. In his current body, fighting off 2 people would be quite difficult. He needed to strengthen his physique and get used to dealing with the zombies outside as soon as possible. As dusk fell, Lin Qin returned to his room and took food from his storage space. It was leftovers from the past 7 days' various stir-fries that just needed reheating. But to avoid attracting attention with strong smells, he ate them cold. The temperature was just right. Paired with rice, he had a very satisfying meal. Night descended as expected. Lin Qin stood by the window on the 3rd floor, opened the iron grill, and gazed into the distance. The streets were desolate. A few dim street lights glowed in the distance, and faint, barely visible lights behind curtains indicated that a handful of households still had survivors. There was nothing else. Lin Qin closed the iron grill completely, sealing himself off from the outside world, then turned on the television. In the middle of the night, he fell asleep on the sofa. The constant vibrations from his phone did not wake him. In her own villa, Wan Qinya had dialed dozens of times, but no one answered. She had been blocked on WeChat, yet strangely his phone number still went through. Her bedroom was ransacked with not a scrap of food to be found anywhere. Now she was nearly driven mad by hunger. Staring into the pitch-black night outside, watching the occasional silhouette of a zombie shuffling in the distance, a bold idea began to take shape in her mind. Wan Qinya put on her sneakers and crept to the door. She pressed her ear against it, listening for any sounds, then quietly opened it and stepped out. The courtyard was shrouded in darkness, though the streetlights outside the villa district still cast a faint glow, preventing total blackness. She looked around, opened the courtyard gate, and slowly stepped out. A hot breeze carrying a foul stench washed over her. Under the dim yellow light, there were no zombies at the gate. Wan Qinya began to move forward cautiously. Though she didn't know Lin Qin's exact location, the property management group had mentioned a new resident who had moved in and was renovating. The villa district was only so big. Everyone knew which house was being renovated. She recalled a property near the east gate, close to the edge. Staying along the edge of the greenery, Wan Qinya moved with extreme caution. As she turned at an intersection and was about to proceed, a hand clamped over her mouth, dragging her into the nearby. Her scream was trapped in her throat. She saw that it was a girl, so she forced herself to suppress the cry. "You?" Wan Qinya asked, her voice trembling. The girl immediately covered her mouth again, signaling her to be quiet. At the other end of the intersection, 3 zombies staggered into view. Their movements were mechanical, their rotting flesh oozing with disgusting fluids. Wan Qianya's breath came in panicked gasps, her eyes wide with terror. Liang Tian dared not release her grip, striving to remain utterly silent. Only after the zombies had passed did Liang Tian let go. Without a word, she headed in the opposite direction. Wan Qinya nervously followed, carefully weaving through the shadows after her. Watching the girl skillfully vault over a wall, Wan Qinya gritted her teeth, and after several attempts managed to climb over as well. "You? Don't overthink it. I just didn't want you to get in my way," Liang Tian said as she expertly rumbled. She eventually found 2 unopened packs of biscuits and began devouring them. Beside her, Wan Qinya swallowed hard, staring at Liang Tian. Liang Tian continued searching and found a pack of yogurt and 2 sandwiches in the fridge. She tossed one sandwich to Wan Qinya. Her tone was harsh. "If you want to survive, you have to rely on yourself. This sandwich is for you, but don't follow me." With food in hand, Wan Qinya ate ravenously. She hadn't eaten in 2 days and was starving. As for not following her tomorrow, Wan Qinya readily agreed. Her plan was always to seek out Lin Qin. Curious, she asked, "Where are you planning to go tomorrow?" Liang Tian drank her yogurt and replied directly, "Staying here is no solution. I need to find a way to get food and water from the streets, or I'll starve to death before rescue comes. As a fellow woman, I advise you to find your own way out as soon as possible." Wan Qinya remained silent. That night the two of them passed in peace. The next morning, they went their separate ways. There were quite a few zombies in the neighborhood, but most of them roamed the periphery. Wan Qianya's path was not easy. She encountered zombies just a few steps after leaving. Panicked, she tried to dodge them, but then she spotted two men ahead on the road. They held machetes, and two slain zombies lay nearby. Without a moment's hesitation to judge the men's intentions, Wan Qinya rushed over in a panic seeking help. But this time luck was not on her side. No one came to her aid. The moment she spoke, one man plunged his blade into her abdomen, then swiftly slit her throat. Don't be soft-hearted. This isn't the time to play the gentleman. Check her for anything useful. Outside, the sun shone brightly. Lin Qin lay on the rooftop balcony, a Beretta 87 pistol in hand. At the front of the surging horde of zombies, a beautiful woman was running barefoot. Her disheveled long hair obscured her face, making it impossible for Lin Qin to see her clearly. But from her fiery figure, she was undoubtedly a stunning beauty. Her fair, delicate skin, slender thighs, curvaceous silhouette, and those enchanting eyes hidden behind her hair. A gentle breeze blew. Her tousled hair was swept to the sides of her face. Lin Qin ugh. He retracted his earlier thoughts. A beauty. From the dark hollow eye sockets, blood trickled down her cheeks, still tinged with crimson. A chunk of flesh was missing from her left cheek, and most strikingly, a bluish-black pattern ran from her face down her neck. Perhaps due to her recent death, the zombie's body bore few marks, still relatively fresh. But that face was rather grotesque. Her long hair covered it, making it hard to tell. He had thought she was limping because of a leg injury. Unexpectedly, she was also a zombie. What a waste of such a great figure. Just as Lin Qin was lamenting, the zombie horde stirred, changing its original direction. The gun in his hand instantly became useless. Lin Qin lingered a while longer, and only after confirming nothing unusual did he return indoors. Out of nowhere, the zombies were lured away. The gun in his hand instantly became useless. Lin Qin lingered a while longer, and only after confirming nothing unusual did he return indoors. Another tedious, monotonous day began. Meanwhile, Zhang Qian sent a message. At 1006. Zhang Qian, Lin Qin, you were right. I didn't sleep a wink last night. That bastard tried to pick my lock and break in. Good thing I was on guard, or he might have killed me in my sleep. But Lin Qin, I killed him. Lin Qin frowned. Lin Qin, what do you mean? Zhang Qian, the fight yesterday made a lot of noise, drawing the zombies from downstairs into the hallway. It was chaotic. The door was open, so I hit him on the back of the head with a stool, knocked him out, and hid in the bedroom. He was left in the living room, mauled alive by the zombies. I was too terrified. On one hand, he wanted to kill me. In self-defense, I locked him out. I didn't dare go out to help him even when he screamed. But that's not the problem now. The thing is, there's still a zombie in the living room, and all the food is there. I'm starving, but I'm too scared to go out. Lin Qin was speechless. Don't be scared. It's just one zombie. If you don't deal with it, you'll starve. Zhang Qian, I'm afraid. Lin Qin, afraid of what? Are you even a man? Zhang Qian, are we brothers or not? Why are you so harsh? Lin Qin, a zombie's weak spot is its head. Forget the kitchen knife. Look for something sharp like a hammer and smash its skull. As your brother, if I don't speak bluntly, you'll never have the heart to do it. Zhang Qian, all right, I'll look for a suit. Wish me luck. No, wish me success. Lin Qin. With that, their conversation ended. Lin Qin put away his phone and then went to the living room on the first floor. The refrigerator there was huge, stocked with plenty of food. Lin Qin looked around, then closed the fridge and opened the freezer to get some ice cream. It was a large tub. He could scoop it out and eat it for a long time. But Lin Qin was somewhat distracted, wondering how Zhang Qian was doing. Was he in trouble? At that moment, Zhang Qian was frantically searching the bedroom for a suitable weapon. He couldn't get the kitchen knife, but the only handy weapons in the room were the pole of a floor lamp and a stool. Was he supposed to fight a zombie with those? Heavy and clumsy, by the time he lifted it, the zombie would already be upon him. No, he needed something more convenient. Like a hammer, a mallet, or a baseball bat. A hammer would be best for dealing with a zombie's head. But his toolbox wasn't in the bedroom. Zhang Qian searched the bedroom frantically. Finally, in the gap above the wardrobe, he found a hammer. An unexpected stroke of luck. He clearly remembered the hammer was always kept in the toolbox. But where it had been was no longer important. Now, with the hammer in hand, his confidence soared. He flung open the bedroom door. The living room was a mess with traces of the zombie's intrusion everywhere. Naturally, the most conspicuous sight was the large bloody patch in the center of the living room, a testament to the struggle. Amidst the blood were scattered grisly bits of flesh. The trail of blood, broken and intermittent, led out to the hallway. He had no idea if there were zombies in the... He had to deal with this zombie quickly and then close the front door. If the hallway was swarming with zombies, he wouldn't... The zombie in the living room seemed quite attached to his home. As soon as the door opened, it reacted like an owner facing an intruder, snarling and charging in fury. Zhang Qian felt a twinge of nervousness, but instinctively tightened his grip on the hammer. The moment the zombie lunged, he swung the hammer at its head. Zombies weren't very agile, especially early on. They were somewhat sluggish. Zhang Qian easily knocked the zombie to the ground with a single blow. Then he repeatedly smashed its head until it split open, releasing a foul stench. Only then did he stop panting heavily. He turned and quickly strode to the front door, closing it. He didn't dare look at the hallway. Leaning against the door, he listened intently for any sounds in the corridor. Hearing nothing for a long time, he finally breathed a sigh of relief. Silence enveloped the room. Zhang Qian looked at the zombie corpse in the living room, then at the bloodstains on his shoes. His heart was still pounding wildly. After a moment of recovery, the smell in the air and the sight of the zombie's head and body made Zhang Qian's stomach churn. He couldn't help but rush to the bathroom, hugging the toilet and vomiting for a long while. When he felt somewhat better, he came out and began to tidy the living room. But seeing the state of the living room, he couldn't suppress another wave of nausea. It was simply too filthy. Enduring his physiological reaction, he cleaned the living room while dry heaving. Meanwhile, Lin Qin, having finished his workout, opened his phone. In various group chats, everyone was discussing what to do when food ran out. Many suggested going out to find food, but many were also wary of the zombies roaming outside. Arguments broke out in the groups until someone posted, "Younger, Kwai Pao, no food at home, how are you all handling it?" Xiao Si, I don't know, just giving up. Tiffany, Younger, Kwai Pao, aren't you afraid of the zombies outside? There are too many downstairs, I dare not go out. Tiffany, of course I'm afraid, but what use is fear? If I don't go out, I'll die anyway. Tiffany, are you really planning to wait for rescue? Younger, Kwai Pao, rescue is definitely not coming, but with so many zombies downstairs, how do you overcome the fear to go out? Wanbai, it's okay for now, the zombies are still slow. As long as you're not caught, it's basically fine. The hard part is the sheer number. Xiao Bai Sha, why are you still discussing whether to go out? I'm already outside. Xiao Bai Sha, let me show you my haul. At least I don't have to worry about food and can wait for rescue in peace. Xiao Bai Sha, image Tiffany, not bad, you've got a lot of food. Looks like you're in a supermarket. Younger, Kwai Pao, impressive, I want to go too. Xiao Bai Sha, yes, the shops along the street are mostly empty. You can take whatever you want. But there are indeed many zombies, so you have to avoid encountering them. Xiao Bai Sha, also I saw other people. In the photo on a silent street, 2 people were hiding by a wall corner, carefully climbing over the fence. Not much detail could be seen in the photo, but the desolate street, some blurred zombies, and people hiding in the distant corner were discernible. It seemed some people could no longer hold back and had gone out. However, from the photo, the zombies outside didn't look too bad. He guessed that more and more people would go out to search for supplies. As he was thinking this, loud shouts suddenly came from outside. Lin Qin, holding an ice cream, turned his head to look at the surveillance footage. On the tree-lined path of the villa area stood 3 men. They were wielding knives, clubs, and axes, fiercely battling 2 zombies that were chasing them. The zombies were strong, but the men's weapons gave them an advantage, and they were much more agile. Even so, they were drenched in sweat. One zombie kept opening its mouth wide, charging at a middle-aged man with a slightly larger belly. The man with a baseball bat rushed over and swung successfully, turning the zombie's head in another direction. The other zombie followed, closely reaching out its hands to grab one of the men's arms. But another man with a kitchen knife kicked it in the stomach and wildly swung the knife. Big brother, hurry up, more zombies are coming from behind. Damn it, these zombies are strong. Third brother, hurry up. Don't worry, big brother coming. Hitting them elsewhere is useless, you have to hit the head. In the footage, the 3 easily took down one zombie. The other had one of its legs chopped off, exposing all kinds of disgusting fluids. The men hurried away, not caring about the zombie with one leg. However, their commotion attracted many zombies. As a result, many zombies followed them out of the guardhouse. For a moment, the villa area seemed much emptier. It seemed they couldn't stay any longer and had to go out to find food. Lin Qin hadn't expected that some brave souls would actually emerge from this villa area. The commotion from the zombies came and went quickly. Soon there was no sound. Lin Qin checked the various installed cameras, but found no other anomalies. However, near the garbage room in the villa area, a zombie was still wandering in place. Lin Qin carefully identified it, and then looked away from the monitor. He then went up to the 3rd floor. Standing there, Lin Qin could see farther. Most importantly, he could get a better view of the distant streets. The zombies wriggled after the 3 men who had just left, eventually disappearing from Lin Qin's sight. The street gradually fell silent. Not a single zombie was on the small paths within the villa area. It was very quiet. But even if the cameras showed no zombies, it didn't guarantee the paths were safe. Lin Qin remained cautious. For now, most zombies were on the roads outside. Inside would be much safer. Lin Qin casually grabbed a baseball bat and went out. Of course, the bat was just for practice. If his life were threatened, he would ultimately use the pistol. He wasn't stupid. The courtyard gate was heavy, but Lin Qin pushed it open without making too much noise. Following his memory, he approached the garbage room step by step. The garbage room was in a remote area with almost no residents nearby. The smell from the trash wasn't too strong on ordinary days. Lin Qin wound through the small paths and finally arrived in front of the garbage room. Looking around, he first approached the greenery by the path. The zombie's exposed skin was far from pleasant to look at, but its clothes were still clean and intact. It was tall and burly with a sturdy frame. The zombie stood in front of the trash can, swaying its body. Its mouth opened and closed from time to time, its teeth clattering as it bit at the air. It didn't look easy to deal with. Lin Qin looked at the baseball bat he had brought from home and silently swapped it for a fire axe. The zombie was tall and strong. A single swing of the baseball bat might break it. A fire axe was better. Weighing the axe in his hand, Lin Qin made up his mind. This one it is. It's all for practice anyway. Lin Qin gave a light cough, and the zombie, which had been dazed, jolted and followed the sound. Gripping the fire axe tightly, Lin Qin stood ready for the zombie. As it approached, it lunged fiercely. Lin Qin was prepared. He sidestepped, and the zombie fell flat on its face. The zombie felt no pain. Its limbs reacted instantly as it lay on the ground staring at Lin Qin from an extremely grotesque angle. It twisted its stiff neck with a creaking sound, successfully turning its head around. Its limbs supported its body in a bizarre manner as it lunged at Lin Qin. Lin Qin was no stranger to this. Such a movement was akin to a special skill for zombies. He had witnessed it far too many times in his past life. Lin Qin raised the fire axe and swung it at the charging zombie. Fortunately, the fire axe was exceptionally effective. After 2 strikes, he managed to sever one of the zombie's arms. Even so, the zombie's movements remained unaffected. Lin Qin frowned slightly, then quickly retreated to create distance. As the zombie drew closer, he raised the fire axe once more and swung it down. This time, Lin Qin exerted all his strength. With a loud thud, Lin Qin seemed to hear the sound of bones shattering. But he did not stop. He swung the fire axe again. Twice. Brains splattered out. The zombie's struggling movements gradually ceased. From the gaps in its bones oozed a sticky, foul-smelling substance. Lin Qin pulled out the fire axe without even a flicker of expression. As his first zombie encounter, he felt his Buddhist reflexes were far inferior to before. Even his strength seemed insufficient. Dealing with a mere basic zombie required 2 swings to be effective. If another one appeared, he might not be able to cope. It seemed he needed to intensify his training to restore his former agility and power. Had he not seized this opportunity to test himself today, he would not have a clear understanding of his current abilities. He glanced at his hands and the fire axe. There would be many more zombies to deal with in the days ahead. As someone with experience, he needed to develop comprehensively. Lin Qin looked around. His commotion had not attracted any more zombies. The place was extremely quiet. However, having dealt with the zombie, it was better to return early. He did not want to encounter a horde before regaining his strength. Even though he had a gun and was not afraid, using it would attract the attention of many covetous eyes. Then he would have to guard not only against zombies, but also against other survivors. Troublesome and headache-inducing. Lin Qin casually wiped the sticky liquid off the fire axe on the trash room's panel, making it look slightly cleaner. But there were still disgusting remnants. Scanning his surroundings, Lin Qin headed straight for a patch of greenery beside a small path. He remembered there was an artificial river there. It would be perfect for cleaning. As he walked, Lin Qin kept an eye on his surroundings to prevent any surprise attacks from zombies lurking in hidden corners. However, Lin Qin was not the only one who noticed the decrease in zombie numbers. In a villa not far from the trash room, several burly men lay naked in the bedroom resting. Having indulged in food and drink, they enjoyed physical pleasure and now slept soundly on the soft bed. In the corner lay the corpse of a man, blood spreading across the living room. The lady of the house, completely naked, stared at the ceiling with unblinking eyes, dead without resigning. Nan Wei's hands and feet were bound, her mouth sealed with tape, unable to make a sound. She could only watch helplessly as her mother was violated to death and her father was killed. She sobbed, not daring to make a sound. When these intruders woke up, she would be next. She could not wait idly as she had to find a way to save herself. Outside, the zombies suddenly became agitated, leaving the area one by one, heading toward the villa center. Something must be attracting them over there. If she wanted to escape, now was the best time. She struggled again, but the shoelaces binding her hands and feet were very tight. She could only take off her shoes and hop to the door, ensuring the men in the opposite bedroom were still asleep. Then she inched forward bit by bit. Reaching the stairs, she minimized noise as she hopped down step by step. Her heart raced throughout the entire. She successfully made it to the first floor and entered the kitchen to grab a fruit knife. Hidden behind her back, she kept cutting at the shoelaces. Even though she cut her palm, Nan Wei did not care. Her bound hands were finally freed by the knife. Without wasting a moment, she immediately cut the shoelaces binding her feet. But she was still discovered. A groggy, burly man, wanting to take advantage of his sleeping companions, planned to devour Nan Wei, the untouched flower, ahead of time. He considerately closed the bedroom door to muffle sounds, ensuring a smooth completion of his deed. However, he found the person missing. His drowsiness vanished instantly. He rushed downstairs and found her already in the kitchen, just as Nan Wei bent over to untie the rope around her ankles. He dashed over in one stride and grabbed her hair. Nan Wei winced in pain, silently hiding the fruit knife in her sleeve. She struggled fiercely but was no match for him. Trying to run. The man's voice was hoarse, his face covered in stubble. His gaze at Nan Wei was particularly predatory. I, Lu Dazhuang, have never let a woman I fancy slip away, and you're no exception. Grabbing her scalp, Lu Dazhuang dragged her to the living room sofa, ignoring her cries of pain. With one hand, he easily pinned both of Nan Wei's hands above her head. He pressed his body onto hers, using the other hand to tear off her clothes. Nan Wei was no match for him. She screamed, struggling with all her might against Lu Dazhuang. But it was their strengths were on completely different levels. During the struggle, Nan Wei's nails left a long scratch on Lu Dazhuang's face. But no one cared about that at the moment. The instant Nan Wei screamed, Lu Dazhuang immediately covered her mouth. He looked around frantically. Fortunately, the zombies did not surge. Lu Dazhuang breathed a sigh of relief. Slap. A slap left Nan Wei's face swollen. Nan Wei curled up, holding her slapped face, glaring at him fiercely. Lu Dazhuang touched his wound, and then said viciously, I'm giving you face by wanting you to serve me, and you act all high and mighty. Lucky the zombies weren't attracted. Slap. Another slap. Blood trickled from the corner of Nan Wei's mouth, but she remained silent, glaring at him hatefully. Not stopping there, Lu Dazhuang grabbed her hair and slammed her head against the coffee table in front of the sofa. What the hell are you looking at? I told you to look, I told you to look. This commotion had already drawn the attention of those upstairs. Several people rushed down the stairs with swift steps, letting out a sigh of relief when they found nothing unusual. Dazhuang, keep it down. Do you want to get us all killed? And don't be so rough. If you end up killing her, where are we going to find another one on short notice? Lu Dazhuang released his grip and spat. Why, you bitch. Don't worry, I know my limits. She won. The zombies outside showed no unusual activity, which greatly relieved Lu Dazhuang. Then his gaze fell upon Nan Wei once more, and he lunged at her again. The other two men behind him couldn't help but speak up. Dazhuang, if you want to have your fun, do it inside. The noise will be much quieter, and it won't attract the zombies. You go inside and have a good time. When you're done, give us a call. We want to enjoy ourselves too. Hearing this, Lu Dazhuang waved his hand, grabbed Nan Wei by the hair, and said, all right, I'm going. A woman's screams were indeed troublesome. If they attracted zombies, the loss would outweigh the gain. In the bedroom, the soundproofing was much better than in the living room. Nan Wei obediently stood up, her head lowered. Hidden beneath her disheveled hair, her eyes blazed with hatred. Seeing how docile Nan Wei was, Lu Dazhuang couldn't help. Nan Wei obediently stood up, her head lowered. Hidden beneath her disheveled hair, her eyes blazed with hatred. Seeing how docile Nan Wei was, Lu Dazhuang couldn't help but boast to his companions. Nan Wei suddenly lifted her head. The fruit knife she had concealed on her body was thrust directly into Lu Dazhuang's abdomen. Having succeeded in her strike, Nan Wei did not linger. Before anyone could react, she pulled out the fruit knife and kicked Lu Dazhuang hard. Then she turned and ran. Lu Dazhuang clutched his bleeding abdomen and let out a pained scream. The two men who had gone into the kitchen heard the commotion and came out only to witness the scene. One man chased after Nan Wei while the other went to Lu Dazhuang's side. Nan Wei ran out, grabbed a stone from the yard, and hurled it at the man behind her. But the man was fast. He grabbed her clothes. Nan Wei bent down and spun around, kicking him hard in the groin. As he doubled over in pain, she acted swiftly. She opened the courtyard gate without hesitation and darted out. There were no zombies in sight, but her body was covered in wounds, and the scent of blood would soon attract them. She had to clean her wounds first and find a safe place to hide temporarily. Of course, she couldn't stay in this villa area any longer. Who knew if those men would come searching later? If she ran into them again, she would be in deep trouble. Nan Wei made her way toward the garbage room. There might be some discarded tissues or cloth in the trash that she could use. First, she needed to clean the blood and wounds on her body. But the man behind her was still in pursuit. Forced to keep running, Nan Wei glanced back at the burly man chasing her. Taking a deep breath, she dove into a nearby cluster of bushes. At a time like this, she couldn't trust anyone. Yet there was already someone hiding in the bushes. From the silhouette, he seemed somewhat frail. He posed zero threat to her. Nan Wei immediately pressed the dagger to the man's throat. Don't make a sound. Lin Qin was taken aback. He never imagined that a simple trip to wash his axe would lead to encountering another person and being directly threatened. But as his gaze swept over her, Lin Qin noticed that she was covered in wounds. Torn clothes, a cut on her lip, and swelling on both sides of her face. It seemed she was connected to the man outside. Through the gaps in the weeds, he could vaguely see a man walking on the path. He was burly, and more importantly, he was holding a large machete. Raising an eyebrow, Lin Qin remained still. Dealing with Nan Wei alone wouldn't be too difficult. But that man outside, he would be a bit of a problem. If he stood up, both of them might become the man's targets. He silently suppressed his urge to resist. From the force of her grip on the knife, she seemed to know some martial arts. How did she end up so badly injured? The man walked along the path for a while looking around, but finding no trace of Nan Wei. Then he turned and left. Only after he was gone did Nan Wei's tense heart begin to relax. But she didn't dare loosen her grip on the fruit knife pressed against Lin Qin's neck. Do you have any medicine at home? Lin Qin didn't answer. Nan Wei narrowed her eyes and pressed the blade a little deeper. Lin Qin had no choice but to speak. No. Nan Wei took a deep breath, her cheeks throbbing with pain. But what hurt even more were the soles of her feet. She had run out barefoot, and the weeds on both sides of the path were filled with more than just soil. There were also small stones and twigs. Gritting her teeth against the pain, Nan Wei gestured for Lin Qin to turn around. Lin Qin, however, had quietly taken a pistol from his storage space. If Nan Wei made any suspicious move, Lin Qin remained silent, still facing away from Nan Wei. Nan Wei stood up and looked toward the shaded path outside. She slowly backed away, leaving the spot. Only then did Lin Qin turn around. He took out the cleaned axe and put it back into his storage space. Lin Qin paid no mind to this little episode. After tidying up, he stepped out of the bushes. But no sooner had he taken a few steps than he heard a woman scream. Nan Wei was biting down hard on a man's arm. Then she spotted Lin Qin. A glint flashed in her eyes as a plan formed. She rushed toward Lin Qin. Lin Qin turned around to see the woman from before already beside him. Without caring if she would attract zombies, she shouted directly, "Brother, you're finally back?" This man tried to kill. Then she turned to the furious man and said, "My big brother is here now. If you've got the guts, kill us both. Otherwise we will avenge our parents." Lin Qin raised an eyebrow looking at the man opposite him and explained in a calm, unhurried tone, "No, I have nothing to do with her. We don't even know each other." But the man didn't listen to Lin Qin at all. Gripping his machete, he sneered, "Doesn't matter. You're both going to die anyway." A scrawny man and a woman. What threat could they possibly be? Seeing that she had successfully redirected the hostility toward Lin Qin, Nan Wei began to back away. Lin Qin felt a headache coming on. He had only come out to practice, and now he was caught up in this mess. Just then another man came walking down the path, a machete in hand. He said to Wang Wei, "Why waste words on them? Hurry up. Keep the woman alive, kill the man." Da Zhuang is still writhing in pain back in the room. Got it. Without another word, the two men advanced on Lin Qin and Nan Wei. Lin Qin was about to threaten the woman beside him, only to realize she had already distanced herself from him. He had been used, pushed to the forefront of the storm. There were two men opposing him. Unarmed, he stood no chance. Lin Qin immediately drew his pistol and aimed it at the two men advancing on him. Hearing nothing for a long time, he finally breathed a sigh of relief. Silence enveloped the room. Zhang Qian looked at the zombie corpse in the living room, then at the bloodstains. With a bang, the bullet struck Wang Wei's leg. He collapsed in pain, clutching his wounded leg, and dared not move recklessly alongside Chen Hu. Lin Qin tilted his head, his gaze indifferent. The deafening sound echoed across the villa district, stirring nearby zombies. This place was no longer safe. Chen Hu immediately dropped his machete and begged for mercy. "Spare us, sir. We weren't targeting you. That woman slashed our brother, so we chased after her. And she claimed you were her brother, which made us harbor ill intentions toward you. But rest assured, now we know you're not. Please, since we've done nothing, let us go." Lin Qin shook his aching arm. The last time Head used this gun was at the shooting range. He was somewhat familiar with its recoil. But it had been many days since his last use. He felt a bit unaccustomed. Shaking his arm, he fired 2 consecutive shots. These 2 couldn't be spared. Home invasions, arson, and plunder were common occurrences. Lin Qin had experienced much and could see through their schemes at a glance. Coupled with what the girl had just said, it wasn't hard to deduce. She had likely lost her entire family and escaped. These 2 couldn't be spared. Home invasions, arson, and plunder were common occurrences. Lin Qin had if he hadn't drawn his gun, he would have been the one to suffer. The zombies' growls grew closer. After finishing them off, Lin Qin turned and walked down a path, planning to head back. But the noise had attracted too many zombies. In no time, they swarmed over. Nan Wei ran to the villa district's main gate, only to see zombies gathering on the streets, madly rushing toward her. They blocked the exit completely. She had to turn back. Then she saw Lin Qin alone with his gun taking down. Her heart skipped a beat, and she froze by the roadside, afraid to move. They were merely a crossroad apart, just Lin Qin's gun aimed at her, and Nan Wei dared not advance. The zombies' sounds grew nearer. She raised her hands in surrender. But the zombies' roars were closing in. If this continued, she'd die either by their jaws or his bullet. Nan Wei's eyes locked onto Lin Qin's gun. The moment he pulled the trigger, she would act. Lin Qin aimed at her and slowly squeezed the trigger. Simultaneously, Nan Wei moved. She sidestepped, lunging to snatch the gun from his hand. Her face was fierce. A loud bang rang out. A zombie behind Nan Wei fell. Many zombies had followed her in. Lin Qin had no time for this woman. As she charged, he kicked her in the abdomen, creating distance between them. Even so, the zombies were close, mere 3 or 4 steps away. Lin Qin fired several more shots, hitting the leading zombies. At such range, nearly every shot was a headshot. As more zombies surged and his bullets ran out, Lin Qin turned and sprinted away, reloading a new magazine. The garbage room was near the villa's west gate, the earliest entry point for zombies. The east gate would be similar. Returning meant he couldn't avoid the zombie horde. But if he moved fast enough, he could avoid the main group. Sparse zombies. If bullets could solve it, it wasn't a... In an instant, Lin Qin vanished from Nan Weiss' sight. This man hadn't killed her. She snapped back to reality and in a panic followed him. For now, this was the only direction without zombies. Her wounds and the scent of blood would enrage the zombies and draw them to her. There seemed to be no truly safe place. That man had a gun. Maybe he was a policeman. In such a law-abiding society, someone with a firearm couldn't be ordinary. Nanwei sprinted at full speed. In her eyes, Lin Qin had absolute strength. If she could survive, what was a little sacrifice? Besides, he was indirectly her benefactor. He had avenged her parents and spared her life. But now a massive wave of zombies had flooded in, blocking the path. To return, he had to cross the horde. Lin Qin crouched by the wall's edge, annoyed. Maybe he should have just jumped into the trash bin. Suddenly, a stone hit his head from above. He looked up and saw the woman from earlier perched on the wall watching him. Do you want to wait to be zombie food? Lin Qin frowned. Can you climb the wall? Hurry. There are too many zombies, nowhere else to hide. After saying this, Nanwei jumped down into the yard. She needed to get inside, close the door, and clean off the... Lin Qin hesitated. The villas were spaced far apart, and every path was now filled with zombies. Not just 2 or 3 nor 5, but dozens. Soon this place too would be discovered. Lin Qin looked up at the not-a-high wall. It was smeared with Nan Weiss' blood. This made things worse. The residual blood would draw zombies direct. Without further thought, Lin Qin vaulted over the wall, then took out a bottle of floral water and sprinkled it near the bloodstains. The strong scent could mask the smell of blood. Yang Shui slapped her thigh decisively. No matter what situation this homeowner is in right now, they are our top priority. Lu Daqing couldn't help but pour cold. Fortunately, there were no other survivors inside. Nanwei had rushed straight to the bathroom to turn on the water, but it had already been cut off. She had to grab a clean towel and wipe the blood off her body as best she could. Hearing noises outside, she gripped a fruit knife and approached the door. As the door swung open, she thrust the knife forward. A sharp gust of wind swept in, and Lin Qin instinctively raised his arm to block. He exchanged a glance with Nanwei. Recognizing Lin Qin, Nanwei relaxed her vigilance and spoke. Sorry, I thought you were a zombie. The groans of zombies permeated from outside the house. Lin Qin said nothing more and released Nan Wei's hand. He then walked inside, surveying his surroundings. Nanwei also put down the fruit knife she was holding and returned to the living room to continue her unfinished task. Once the bloodstains were mostly wiped clean, Nanwei resumed her search. Typically, families living in such large villas keep a medicine cabinet stocked with some basic household remedies. Iodine, antiseptic, and bandages would be ideal. Her movements were brisk and far from quiet. She rummaged through almost every drawer and cabinet, searching both upstairs and downstairs. However, Nanwei still harbored a degree of caution towards Lin Qin. After confirming there were no hidden dangers in the villa, Lin Qin couldn't help but remind her, aren't you afraid this noise will attract the zombies? Don't worry, this noise won't draw them here, Nanwei replied in a hushed tone. Although her searching was quick, she made sure to produce only faint sounds. At most, it was just the noise of opening and closing various drawers and cabinet doors. Besides, she wasn't pulling or pushing them with much force. Finally, Nanwei found the medicine cabinet. She sat down in the living room and first cleaned her wound with iodine. Lin Qin, meanwhile, turned his gaze to the other person in the room. Their eyes met. Nan Wei's heart skipped a beat as she spoke first. We can coexist peacefully, can't we? Before you answer, let me explain what just happened. What I did earlier was out of sheer desperation. They broke into my home and killed my parents. I barely managed to escape. When I was caught again, I saw you as my only lifeline, hoping to make them back off. To my surprise, you are very strong. But I didn't mean to use you. You helped me eliminate my enemies, and I helped you get rid of the zombies. However you look at it, we're even. Lin Qin let out a cold laugh. Do you think I'm a good person, eh? He stepped forward, and Nan Wei's entire body tensed as she stared at him intently. But Lin Qin simply walked to the edge of the stairs, listening to the noises outside. A sudden bang rang out. Nanwei was also startled by the unexpected sound. She hastily stuffed the contents of the medicine cabinet into her pockets. At the same time, she followed Lin Qin to the stairs and looked up. Lin Qin drew his pistol, staring warily at the upper floor. Did you go into all the rooms upstairs when you were looking for the medicine cabinet? He asked in a low voice. Nanwei nodded. I did, but there are 2 rooms up there. I didn't go into the other one. The door was locked. Lin Qin ascended the stairs with Nanwei following closely behind. The second floor was very clean, almost devoid of clutter. There were only 2 rooms, one with its door open and the other firmly shut. A faint putrid odor hung in the air, which was to be expected given the horde of zombies outside. The noise came from the bedroom with the closed door. Lin Qin gestured for Nanwei to open the door. I can't, it's locked. Bang! As Nan Wei's words faded, the door was struck with tremendous force, producing a loud crash. Nan Wei stared at the door warily. Could there be a zombie inside? Step back. Lin Qin remained unusually calm. After a moment's thought, he retreated. In the future, situations like this, zombies locked in rooms, would be quite common. It was hardly unusual. Judging by the noise, there weren't many, probably just one. The zombie inside had likely become agitated upon hearing their movements. But zombies possess considerable strength. A wooden door like this would splinter after a few impacts. And indeed it happened. After the first strike, a second one followed. This time the zombie's roar rang out, filled with agitation. Soon a hole appeared in the door. The zombie, feeling no pain, continued its assault. The hole in the door grew larger, and suddenly a head poked through the gap. It opened its mouth wide, snapping at the two of them. Nan Wei instinctively felt nauseous. Beside her, Lin Qin remained utterly composed, striking the zombie's neck with a single swift blow from his blade. At that moment, Nan Wei had no time to wonder where Lin Qin's knife had come from. She simply watched the zombie's head roll to their feet, her face full of disgust. It seems this place isn't safe anymore either, Lin Qin said solemnly. Standing by the second-floor window, he could see the zombies outside, all swarming at the front gate. They were constantly shaking the iron-barred gate. Nan Wei nodded and turned to go downstairs. The owner of this house was a woman. While searching the shoe cabinet earlier, she had noticed many high heels. She found a pair of relatively comfortable sneakers and put them on. Then she took down the bow hanging on the wall in the corner and slung it over her shoulder. Lin Qin, meanwhile, directly opened the back door. The small courtyard here led in another direction. Most of the zombies were gathered at the front gate. The back gate was smaller, and the path behind it was a narrow lane. Bamboo groves lined both sides. Lin Qin chose to head straight toward his own house, paying no attention to Nan Wei behind him. The two of them made their way through the bamboo path, managing to stay relatively safe. They did pass a few houses with doors left ajar, where they could see blood splattered across the yards, and as Lin Qin continued forward, Nan Wei reached out and pulled him into the bamboo grove to hide. On the path ahead, two zombies were staggering about. They wore property management uniforms and carried wooden sticks. Lin Qin frowned, immediately recalling the property management staff he had seen on the surveillance footage earlier. Weren't these the two who had been the first to die at the hands of the zombies? Nan Wei dared not speak, and Lin Qin didn't act rashly. Making a sound would only attract more zombies from the other side. It would mean having to flee again, which wasn't worth the trouble. They crouched there for a moment, and Nan Wei quietly found a good angle. Then she aimed the bow she had taken from the villa at the zombie ahead. With a soft whoosh, the arrow pierced the zombie's head, killing it instantly. Nan Wei drew a second arrow and aimed at the other zombie. It was just as swift and precise. Lin Qin raised an eyebrow, a flicker of surprise crossing his mind. Her archery stance seemed oddly familiar. It reminded him of that archery champion from before. Nan Wei then signaled for Lin Qin to follow and get out of there quickly. As they passed the zombie bodies, she pulled the two arrows from their heads. She only had 5 arrows left. Once they were gone, that was it. Still, Nan Wei used an arrow to lift the clothes on the zombies. After all, these zombies were once human. There might be something useful on them. Yet unfortunately, his pockets were utterly empty. The surroundings fell silent, and the distant groans of zombies gradually faded into nothingness. The narrow path led to a main road where the likelihood of encountering zombies was far greater. Their steps quickened instinctively. Just then, a trail of blood dragged across the bluestone slabs ahead, winding toward a corner. The soil between the slabs bore the marks of frantic clawing. Judging by the blood, it was still fresh. Yet no human screams had been heard in the villa area today. This bamboo grove was relatively secluded, and the path on both sides, perhaps due to lack of sunlight, had damp soil. Thus the claw marks were especially distinct. Lin Qin furrowed his brow, speculating that zombies were the cause. As for why no screams were heard, it was hard to determine. Nonetheless, both of them heightened their vigilance. At the end of the blood trail, Lin Qin found nothing unusual. The blood seemed to vanish abruptly, as if it had disappeared into thin air. Though puzzled, they said nothing. They successfully reached the main road. Lin Qin looked toward the front avenue of the row of villas where a considerable number of zombies lingered, at least 70 or 80 of them. Fortunately, the zombies were gathered there and hadn't noticed them. Lin Qin sprinted and disappeared around this fork. However, having missed this turn, another road revealed a few scattered zombies. These few seemed unaffected by the commotion elsewhere, merely wandering aimlessly along the roadside. To pass through, they had no choice but to go this way. It was about 2 intersections away from returning. This spot was actually quite close to his house, but the problem was that behind one intersection the row of villas was swarming with zombies. If he fired a gun, it would quickly draw another wave. Nan Wei followed behind, drawing her bow and taking aim. The 4 arrows were remarkably accurate. Soon the zombies on the road ahead were dealt with. Nan Wei curled her lips and brandished her bow. Neither of them spoke a word. Since someone had solved the problem, Lin Qin simply moved forward. Nan Wei followed, and they arrived at a fork. With no zombies in sight, Nanwei spoke. Alright, this is it. My name is Nanwei. What's yours? We might run into each other again. Lin Qin paused and turned his head to look at her. To be honest, he didn't want to get involved with her. But the zombie situation along the way had left him with no choice. He hadn't even had a chance to confront her properly before new troubles arose. There was no way to part ways. Still, this Nanwei didn't seem like a completely useless ornament. At the very least, her archery skills struck him, an outsider, as remarkably formidable. Lin Qin silently tightened his grip on his weapon. It might be better if this Nanwei were dead. Just as he was about to act, he heard her introduce herself. Lin Qin paused. Nanwei. That name sounded oddly familiar. In his past life, while hiding from zombies in a garbage room, someone named Nanwei had saved him. But back then she had her own small team. In his days, he hadn't seen her face clearly, only heard his underlings calling her sister Nanwei. Whether it was the same person, Lin Qin couldn't tell. Nevertheless, he abandoned the thought of eliminating her. No need. We probably won't meet again. Nanwei didn't want to get entangled either, given that her 2 instances of using him were real, even if she had her reasons. Fortunately, he felt the same way. Why not? His expression was indifferent, clearly unwilling to engage further. Nanwei smiled and shook her head, but the movement tugged at the wounds on her cheeks, making her wince in pain. Alright, suit yourself. But I'm really not a bad person. Their conversation didn't waste much time, barely even a minute in total. As they spoke, they kept scanning their surroundings to ensure safety. Lin Qin merely smiled and said nothing. They exchanged a glance as the sound of car engines suddenly roared from the street outside. Such a noise would surely draw nearby zombies into a frenzy. Nanwei's face turned pale, and she couldn't help cursing. Which idiot didn't watch the news? Driving around, making noise. Lin Qin said nothing, though he shared Nanwei's sentiment. Behind them, the zombies' groans rose again, growing louder with each passing moment. Nanwei glanced around, then grabbed Lin Qin's sleeve and dragged him toward the nearest villa. Pushing him, she whispered, "Hurry up and climb." Lin Qin twitched his eyes, but still climbed up. Behind him, just 200 meters away, stood his own villa. But the row of zombies behind was closing in fast. Even if he sprinted, it would take 2 or 3 minutes to reach his place, while the zombies would spot him in just over a minute. Clearly too late. Lin Qin had no choice but to climb into the nearest yard first. Nanwei followed, vaulting over. They pressed their backs against the wall, not making a sound. The zombies came and went in a hurry, disappearing quickly. Lin Qin turned and stood up, only to see the curtain of the master bedroom on the 2nd floor suddenly pulled aside. A girl stared at them in the yard with a terrified expression. Lin Qin recognized her, but only in passing. Last time he had witnessed her father die in the jaws of zombies while she hid in the yard, too afraid to make a sound. Seeing her suddenly appear, Lin Qin was stunned for a moment. It seemed the girl was resilient, having survived by hiding at home until now. Nanwei saw her too. But before the girl could speak, a large hand covered her mouth and dragged her inside. Nanwei froze for a second, then dashed upstairs in a flurry. With a bang, she kicked the door open. Soon the sounds of a scuffle echoed from within. Lin Qin glanced outside, confirming that the zombies had been lured away by the car noises. Then he leisurely entered the room to check on the situation. Inside, a gaunt man lay on the floor, his throat slit by Nanwei's strike. The girl in the room watched Nanwei and Lin Qin warily. Lin Qin wasn't one to be warm-hearted. In fact, he felt that Nanwei's actions would only bring her trouble. But he said nothing. After all, one learns from repeated mistakes. In his past life, Lin Qin had also been kind-hearted, but after witnessing too much and nearly dying, he would never harbor such goodwill again. Seeing no further issues, Lin Qin slowly retreated. With the zombies drawn away by the car, it was the perfect time to return. He had ample time to get back to his house. Just as he thought this, the sound of vehicles crashing rang out from outside. Lin Qin frowned and quickened his pace. The 200-meter distance wasn't far, and Lin Qin jogged all the way. He unlocked the door and entered, taking less than 2 minutes. He bolted the door from inside and stepped into the room. Boom! A massive explosion shook the ground. Lin Qin instinctively crouched, wrapping his arms around. No matter how safe his room was, it couldn't withstand a bombardment. The explosion was too sudden. Lin Qin's instinctive reaction was to protect himself. As the echoes of the explosion faded, Lin Qin climbed to the 3rd floor. He stood by the window, peering outside to assess the situation. On the street not far away, a car had exploded. The crash he had heard earlier must have been this vehicle. However, not far from the burning wreckage, 2 other cars stood. Judging by the tire marks on the road, it seemed someone had tried to break through the encirclement and drive away. Unfortunately, a massive horde of zombies had easily intercepted and overturned the car. The other 2 vehicles were in dire straits. One had crashed into a roadside shop, its front end crumpled inward. The other lay upside down, flipped over by the zombies. Lin Qin could clearly see the people inside frantically scrambling into the back seats, trying to escape the zombies on top of the car. Yet their efforts were futile. The windshield of the car was shattered, and the zombies swarmed inside like a hive of bees, leaving no escape. The occupants of the other car were relatively luckier. When the car was intercepted and crashed into the roadside, the people inside had already flung open the doors and rolled out. They stumbled and crawled, sprinting wildly down the distant street. A trail of zombies followed them, dragging along with families in tow. Eventually, they disappeared from Lin Qin's sight. The two overturned cars emitted wisps of blue smoke. It seemed they might explode again at any moment. More and more zombies gathered, smashing the car windows and breaking in. Gasoline-spilled blue smoke rose, mingling with the screams of the men inside. Lin Qin's sharp eyes caught sight of the gasoline from the two cars pooling together. Flames quickly connected to the neighboring vehicle. He put down his binoculars and swiftly closed the iron sheet covering the window. This car was about to explode a second time. It might even trigger the other overturned vehicle nearby. Sure enough, before long, an explosion echoed from outside. A deafening roar accompanied by surging waves of air. Lin Qin waited a moment, then opened the iron sheet to look outside. The explosion had blown many zombies to pieces, and a sizable crater was blasted into the roadside. All objects on the street were destroyed by the blast shockwave. Flames shot into the sky and thick black smoke rose above the street. Lin Qin paused, gazing at the dismembered zombie corpses scattered across every corner of the street from the explosion. In particular, a few pieces of flesh propelled by the shockwave slapped against Lin Qin's security window and stuck there. Living by the street had the advantage of observing the surroundings at any time. The downside was this very situation. Yet the sound of the explosion caught the attention of other survivors in the area. Many people gazed from afar at the direction of the rising black smoke, silently speculating on the specifics. Lin Qin's position faced the street, giving him an exceptionally clear view. But Lin Qin's wasn't the only house in the villa district. Those still alive stood on their rooftops looking outward. Just then Lin Qin noticed Nan Wei next door. Nan Wei froze for a moment, then nodded without saying much. Now was not the time for greetings. Even though the cars on the street had exploded, countless zombies still surged forward. The two-car explosions had killed many, but also attracted many more. Lin Qin never expected that this remote spot chosen to avoid the zombie horde would become a magnet for more zombies. All because two fools had tried to escape by car and triggered an explosion. Now what was once a secluded location had turned into a zombie concentration camp. Lin Qin watched for a while, then returned to his room. He lay down on the sofa to rest. Earlier his surveillance had shown only a single zombie, so he had intended to hone his skills. But he never expected such an unexpected turn of events. Still, the outcome was favorable. The problem was that the zombies outside had gathered in large numbers again, making it hard to venture out anytime soon. His plan to train his combat skills would have to be confined to the basement gym. First, I need to build up my body, Lin Qin thought, as he sprawled on the sofa, closing his eyes to rest. These next few days would be the most dangerous. He needed to keep his energy and stamina at their peak at all times. Next door now lived Nan Wei and that young girl. They were somewhat acquaintances. They posed little threat. There were likely quite a few survivors in this villa. Still, he had to remain vigilant. Soon night fell. At 7 in the evening, the solar-powered streetlights along the road lit up on time, while those requiring electrical power remained dark. Lin Qin reached out and pulled open the curtain to look outside. In the pitch-black night, not a single household's light was on. Indeed, on the first day of the power outage, the neighborhood had no electricity, so naturally no lights glowed. But occasionally a few homes flickered with faint light. It was likely just candlelight. However, with the blackout curtains drawn, it was hard to see clearly. On the roads and tree-lined paths, some sections were illuminated by solar-powered streetlights. The city wasn't plunged into complete darkness. At night, however, zombie activity was less frequent than during the day, and their numbers seemed to dwindle. The daytime cacophony also quieted down. Still, the occasional faint growls of zombies could still be heard. Lin Qin glanced down a couple of times, then spotted a furtive figure at the corner of the street wall. The figure slipped into the small supermarket across the street from his building. Lin Qin observed for a moment, then drew the curtain and returned inside. He didn't turn on any lights in the villa. The flashlight from his phone cast a glow within the house. He made his way from the third floor down to the basement. After closing the hidden door to the basement, he finally switched on the lights down there. Lin Qin had concentrated the solar panels in the yard to power the basement equipment. Besides running these devices, the energy was sufficient for his daily needs. Turning off the phone's flashlight, he walked over and sat down on the sofa. The basement was equipped with a bed and other furnishings he had placed earlier, allowing him to rest there. It was essentially a self-contained studio apartment. Lin Qin had long calculated that once the water and electricity were fully cut off, the lights on the ground floor of the villa couldn't be turned on. The only place to sleep was the basement. He took a bucket of fried chicken from his storage space, and without forgetting, duplicated a copy to put back into the storage. Lin Qin sat on the sofa and turned on his phone. A message from Zhang Qian had just arrived. He grabbed a chicken leg, took a bite, and opened it. Zhang Qian, hey, are you there? It's incredible. You were right about the power outage. Good thing I charged everything. Zhang Qian, Oh, and I saw most people in the building run out today. The zombies in the neighborhood seem manageable, but I don't know how it is outside. I've been keeping my head down these past few days, just as you advised, and haven't dared to step out. How are you? Doing okay. Got anything to eat? Zhang Qian asked. Lin Qin bit into a chicken leg and typed back a reply. Don't worry about me, I've got food. The situation is too unstable right now. When the rescue arrives, you should go with them to the shelter. The small amount of food he had left wouldn't last long. It was definitely better to follow the rescue team to the shelter. Don't worry, you'll stay put in my room. You be careful too. They finished their hurried conversation and went back to their own. Lin Qin turned on the TV and watched previously downloaded content. He sipped the iced cola from the family bucket meal and ate the chicken wings and drumsticks inside. Night fell as expected. An unusual stillness surrounded him, devoid of the usual noises of daily life. After finishing his meal, Lin Qin piled all the bones back into the family bucket. He wiped his fingers clean with a tissue, then leaned back and continued watching TV. The show playing was Go Fighting. Compared to the earlier seasons, the later ones were rather dull, but it was still good enough to pass the time and have a laugh. After watching for a while, Lin Qin turned off the TV. He had worked hard all day and needed a good rest. There was even more to do tomorrow. That night, Lin Qin slept soundly. The next morning, he woke up groggily. Yawning, he went through his usual morning routine. He turned on the electric pot and boiled some dumplings. After eating his fill, he opened the system to check the supplies in his storage space. He had duplicated a lot of items, but had just tossed them all into the space in a mess. Now that he had time, Lin Qin took a look. Everything was in single copies. Because of his meals over the past few days, every time he took something out, he would duplicate another one. But inevitably, he would forget sometimes. His memory wasn't perfect. After some thought, Lin Qin decided to organize things. There were at least 100 items in the storage space. Duplicating them all one by one would take a lot of time. He started by taking out the essential food and water. 1 became 2. 2 became 4. 4 became 8. And so on. This method was actually quite fast. Duplicating 7 times would give him 128 copies. The main problem was the variety and complexity of the items. Duplicating the food and water alone took nearly an hour. Then Lin Qin duplicated some daily necessities, which also took about an hour. As for the grain seeds, Lin Qin didn't plan to duplicate them for now. He wouldn't be touching the current stock anytime soon. By the time he was mostly done, it was already noon. Lin Qin touched his stomach. He wasn't really hungry, yet having eaten a big breakfast. He went to the fridge, took out the chilled watermelon he had stored, and cut it in half. Sitting in the separate living area of the basement, Lin Qin ate the watermelon when suddenly the alarm vibrated. Lin Qin immediately turned his head to look at the surveillance monitor. Outside the wall, 2 men were sneaking around the edge of Lin Qin's villa wall, looking around furtively. They kept glancing up at the high wall and the front gate. From the monitor, they didn't look clean at all. Their clothes were tattered and stained with blood, and they carried lethal weapons. They looked nothing short of it. They looked around cautiously, then crouched down slowly against the modified wall. The flower bed and greenery were set back a short distance from the wall, just enough to hide their bodies. They were hardly visible. The man in front shuffled forward a bit, then reached out and tentatively tugged at Lin Qin. The gate didn't budge. It was obviously locked. He felt his way up and peered through the small opening in the iron gate. The front yard was small. The main yard was at the back. Even so, the yard was completely empty. However, the windows on the 1st to 3rd floors of the house were all fitted with security bars, and behind the bars there seemed to be iron shutters. This was clearly prepared in advance. Regardless of this household was indeed as strange as the property management had said. He slowly crouched down and said to his companion, "This place is weird, but it's our lucky break." Before the zombies ran rampant, Lin Qin's renovations were indeed peculiar. Anyone would have thought it was designed to store corpses. Wang Yang finished speaking and looked up again. The wall had been heightened. The bricks were normal, but there was a layer of wire mesh on top, coiled into loops with barbs attached. An electric fence. It didn't look like it had been set up recently, but rather to prevent people from climbing over. And at this height, climbing alone would be difficult. Luckily, there were 2 of them. As Wang Yang assessed the height, the man behind him nudged his companion. "What are you messing around for? This wall can be climbed. Stop dawdling, hurry up." Wang Yang turned back. "I know, I was just thinking about what the property group said. Could this guy have predicted it? Why else would he fortify the wall and gate like this? But it's daytime now, it's not safe. How about we wait until night?" Li Chun clicked his tongue. "You think night is any safer? Besides, we're already here. We can't waste this opportunity. And who cares about the house? This just means it's safe inside. There's only that Lin Qin guy. The 2 of us will hold him down, he'll take care of him, and the house is ours." Wang Yang nodded. "You've got a point. Let's get in first. The electric fence shouldn't be a problem, right?" He was unsure about the wire on the wall. Li Qin laughed and cursed. "The power's been out for 2 days. Where's the electricity coming from? Hurry up, it'll boost you." Wang Yang realized his mistake. He was right. The power was out, so even an electric fence wouldn't be live. They looked around, then formed a human ladder to lift Wang Yang up. Seeing this, Lin Qin couldn't help but take a deep breath. Because of previous issues with the property management, his house was well known in the neighborhood. It had probably been targeted long ago. If not for the 2 car explosions yesterday, the zombies from the villa wouldn't be wandering the streets outside. These 2 men wouldn't have appeared right outside his villa. Lin Qin scooped up a spoonful of watermelon, cool and refreshing. As for the 2 men outside, he couldn't be bothered with their fate. With a thud, something heavy fell from the wall and landed at the edge of the corner. Lin Qin swallowed a mouthful of watermelon and glanced up at the monitor. The 2 people who had climbed over the wall were electrocuted and collapsed to the ground, convulsing. As for whether they lived or died, Lin Qin did not know. However, there were surprisingly few zombies to be seen within the villa district. Most were roaming the streets. It was hard to say whether these 2 were lucky or unlucky. They had simply stumbled into misfortune. At least their bodies remained intact for the time being. Lin Qin glanced at another monitor. Zombies wandered aimlessly through the streets, moving about. After a night, their range of movement had expanded significantly. They had essentially staggered their way to another street. Roughly speaking, only about a dozen zombies lingered on the street in front of his villa. Several survivors who had gone out in search of food were being chased wildly by zombies. Through the monitor, he could see the surging figures of the zombies and hear the occasional screams. They gradually disappeared from Lin Qin's surveillance range. Indeed, faced with the choice between starving to death or taking a risk to find food, everyone would choose to venture out. Lin Qin lowered his head and took another scoop of watermelon. Then he noticed a man appear at the security booth near the main gate of the residential complex. Not far behind him were 2 other men and a woman. The man waved his hand, and the others behind him bent over and quickly ran to the back of the security booth, nervously eyeing the zombies wandering in the distance. "Old Qin, what do we do? The supermarket is right across the street. To get there, we need to deal with those zombies first." These zombies, for some reason, had gathered around the supermarket. It was too dangerous for them to cross. They didn't have any powerful weapons. Though kitchen knives seemed decent and were common against the zombies, they would have to engage in close combat. Once they got close, things would spiral out of their control. So despite the small number of zombies, their lethality was immense. Chen Jin crouched behind the security booth, pondered for a moment, then said, "Push her out." "Who?" Wang Yao was stunned, not catching on immediately. Chen Jin turned around, his gaze fixed on the only woman in the group. Her hands were bound and her body was covered in injuries. Her face and exposed arms were scarred and her clothes were tattered. Black tape was plastered over her mouth, rendering her unable to make a sound even if she wanted to speak. Hearing Chen Jin's words, she shook her head in resistance, but was helplessly dragged by Wang Yao to Chen Jin's front. Chen Jin tilted his head to look at her, then drew a dagger and pressed it against her chin. "Run straight ahead from here. Don't look back." The woman shook her head in defiance, but Chen Jin paid no heed. He applied slight pressure with the dagger, cutting a thin wound on her neck. The woman winced in pain, looking at Chen Jin with tearful eyes, and dared not resist any longer. Seeing this, Chen Jin let out a cold laugh. "If you don't go, I'll kill you right now. If you go, you might survive. This is your only chance." Indeed, if she were fast enough and clever enough to shake off the zombies chasing her, she might actually have a chance to live and escape this group for good. She nodded and had no choice but to comply. The ropes around her wrists were untied, and Chen Jin watched her intently. With no other option, the woman stood up trembling. Under their gaze, she dashed out. The zombies lingering at the supermarket entrance immediately became agitated. One after another, they scrambled to chase the woman. In no time, all the zombies were lured away by her. The street was completely cleared of them. The group waited for a moment, ensuring no zombies remained, then rushed out. They headed straight for the supermarket, whose door was made of transparent tempered glass and locked. But they were beyond caring and smashed through the glass door, storming inside to loot everything. Having not eaten properly for days, they couldn't stop grinning at the sight of the fully stocked food. The commotion attracted many people from nearby streets. Soon a crowd emerged, all acting like looters. They stripped the supermarket clean of food and water. Some wielded knives, others carried stools, smashing windows and doors to sneak in and fill bag after bag. They stuffed everything they could carry. The street descended into chaos. The zombies that had disappeared at the end of the street gradually began to return. The noise was too loud. Soon someone spotted the zombies. The smart ones immediately retreated to their rooms, while some greedy individuals focused solely on grabbing more supplies. As a result, some people fought the zombies with their weapons. Screams echoed through the streets. The zombies were immensely strong, and many underestimated their lethality. Some were kicked down and bitten by the zombies. Others died on the spot. Some died, and others turned into zombies themselves. The tense atmosphere on the street returned. Those who hadn't managed to grab any food set their sights on those who had. Amidst the chaos of people fleeing and taking cover, they seized the opportunity to loot. But when faced with danger, people's survival instincts drive them to eliminate the zombies or threats. Lin Qin watched the chaotic street eating watermelon and reflecting on how fortunate he was not to have to search for food like these people. However, Lin Qin spotted familiar faces on the monitor: Nan Wei and the little girl from the neighboring villa. They had entered a supermarket, both carrying backpacks stuffed to the brim. Nan Wei was quite cautious. She held the little girl's hand tightly as they dodged through the chaotic crowd. But the two women loaded with two heavy bags soon caught someone's attention. Lin Qin watched with interest as he adjusted the monitor to track Nan Wei's route. The woman was alert and had already noticed the two men following them. She didn't head straight back to the villa. Instead, she pulled the girl into a slightly longer alley. If anyone discovered where they lived, these people might end up like the thugs who had broken into her home. Nan Wei quickly tugged the girl along the road. Amidst the chaotic crowd, a zombie in a police uniform approached. Nan Wei's eyes lit up. The zombie was still wearing a bulletproof vest and a police belt with a pistol holstered on it. This was a weapon delivered by fate itself. Of course, Nan Wei wasn't the only one eyeing this police zombie. After all, the police gear was valuable. Even just the bulletproof vest could make a crucial difference in a critical moment. Moreover, there was a pistol tucked at its waist. Nan Wei gave some instructions to the other party, but Lin Qin couldn't hear what was said. From the surveillance footage, he could only see the two walking in separate directions. However, judging by the route, Lin Yuan ran straight back to the villa district. But the crowd was in utter chaos with the addition of zombies. The chaotic crowd collided with one another. A slightly older woman nearby, trying to evade a zombie, shoved her directly toward the nearest one. But with a stumble, Lin Yuan was knocked to the ground. Long fingernails scraped across Lin Yuan's arm. But she had no time to care, hastily scrambling to her feet and fleeing the place. Behind her, the group that had been trailing them saw the supplies piling up on Lin Yuan. They immediately shifted their target and followed her all the way to the villa district. As for Nan Wei, the zombie in front of her charged into the crowd, sinking its teeth into a man's neck and tearing off a chunk of flesh. The panicked crowd around screamed and fled, mingling with various zombies. In the distance, a burly man was also striding quickly toward this zombie police officer. Nan Wei took a deep breath, pulled the dagger from her thigh, and faced the zombie head-on. She needed to take down this zombie before the big man arrived. She aimed the blade at the zombie's eye, thrust it in with force, and twisted it. At the same time, she removed the pistol from the zombie's waist. With a spin, Nan Wei released the safety catch and fired a shot at the back of the zombie's head. After dispatching the zombie and securing the weapon, Nan Wei turned around. The big man was already upon her, swinging a cleaver straight at her. Nan Wei stepped back, released the safety, and shot the big man in the head. Meanwhile, a frantic pounding came from Lin Qin's door. Lin Yuan stood trembling before Lin Qin's door, calling out, "Brother, please save me." "Brother," she cried out again and again. Her face was a mask of tension and fear. Sister Nan Wei had told her to bring the things and find the brother next door. But was he not home? She had shouted so loudly, why hadn't the door opened yet? The footsteps behind her grew louder, and soon two men appeared. Lin Yuan hugged the two bundles tightly, staring nervously at the two men behind her. "I'm warning you, don't try anything." Both men wielded large cleavers and were heavily built. Dealing with a 19-year-old girl was easy enough, wasn't it? They strode forward, ignoring the fruit knife in Lin Yuan's hand, each grabbing a bundle and yanking hard. Lin Yuan couldn't overpower two grown men. The shorter one snatched a bundle and left directly. The slightly taller man had more trouble. After one backpack was taken, Lin Yuan clung desperately to the remaining one, refusing to let go. This was what she and Sister Nan Wei had fought so hard to find. Without these two bundles of supplies, they wouldn't survive the days ahead. They would die. The taller man kicked Lin Yuan in the abdomen, cursing under his breath, "Damn, you're strong for a young girl. Is this bag something you deserve to have?" Lin Yuan was kicked backward, falling hard. Her stomach, having eaten little in days, she felt dizzy and lightheaded. Ignoring the zombies roaming the villa district, she crawled forward again and grabbed the backpack strap. Whether Sister Nan Wei came back or not was uncertain, but she had to keep these supplies. The man scowled, enraged and embarrassed. He swung his cleaver at Lin Yuan. Damn it, the zombies had already entered the villa district. If this woman kept stalling, he would become a zombie's meal. Yet Lin Yuan was quicker. She plunged the dagger into the man's thigh and bit down hard with her teeth. The taste of flesh in her mouth was oddly fascinating. Lin Yuan felt a hint of greed. The man in pain swung the cleaver down, slashing her back and shoulder. But the force was much weaker. In the panic, seeing the zombies drawing closer, the man kicked Lin Yuan toward the horde, grabbed the backpack, and fled in another direction. The bluestone pavement was icy cold. Lin Yuan was covered in wounds, and the zombies rushed at her, jaws wide open. She wanted to run, but the pain and her Botus reaction left her staring blankly at the approaching swarm. It was over as she was going to die. Bang! Several gunshots rang out, and the zombies charging at her fell one by one. Then a figure appeared. He wore a police uniform and held a gun. After the zombies were dealt with, Lin Yuan finally let out the breath she had been holding. Her body, as if regaining control, collapsed limply to the ground. The policeman glanced at her and saw her severe wounds. Taking her away was out of the question. With injuries like that, she would be a walking target. Moreover, there were no medicines, no cure. After a moment's hesitation, he searched around Lin Yuan for any useful supplies. Confirming there was nothing of value, he left directly. Lin Yuan raised her hand, then let it fall. The pain was overwhelming. She crawled toward Lin Qin's door, and collapsed unconscious. In the surveillance footage, only after all was quiet outside did Lin Qin leisurely step out. It wasn't that he was heartless, but in this apocalypse he could do nothing for Lin Yuan's wounds. And these wounds were not what they seemed. Perhaps she herself hadn't noticed. Besides, they were neither acquainted, nor had they ever received help from others. Even now, 2 corpses lay in the corner. As the iron gate opened, Lin Yuan appeared before Lin Qin. Without medicine, her wounds would easily attract zombies and fester. Lin Qin didn't spare her a glance and walked straight out. There weren't many zombies in the villa district, most were still on the chaotic streets. But after this commotion, the number of living people on the streets had dwindled. Only zombies roamed about. Lin Qin looked around, then dragged out the 2 corpses hidden in the gap between the flower bed and the wall. Hidden in such a nook, even zombies would have a hard time finding them to eat. Especially in this scorching weather, they would reek within days. Lin Qin had smelled that stench of decay mixed with zombie rot before. Even though he was used to it, he didn't want that foul odor lingering around his home. He dragged the corpses to the door and returned inside. Just as he was about to enter, Lin Yuan grabbed his pant leg. Lin Qin tried to move his leg, but her grip was too tight. He couldn't shake her off. He paused, looking down at Lin Yuan by his feet. In your condition, I can't save you. He had medicine, but none for slash wounds or the zombie virus. The gash on his shoulder had already even if she hadn't been scratched by a zombie, such a wound was beyond his ability to treat. Yet the most fatal was the injury on her ankle. That was a zombie scratch. Amid the chaotic crowd outside, Lin Yuan's fall had saved her from the zombie charging straight at her. But another zombie had grabbed her ankle. Focused solely on escaping, Lin Yuan hadn't noticed at all. However, Lin Qin had already spotted it from the surveillance feed. Lin Yuan's fingers curled, gradually releasing her grip. Lin Qin returned directly to the villa without saying a word. He had seen far too many cases like Lin Yuan's before, yet for some reason, he felt a twinge of unease in his heart. Tossing and turning, Lin Qin eventually pulled out his phone. In WeChat's message list, the most recent contact was Zhang Qian. Lin Qin took the initiative to send a message. How have you been lately? Doing all right. Soon Zhang Qian replied, pretty good, living the sweet life every day. Lin Qin's sweet life. That adjective seemed a bit ambiguous, didn't it? Stuck at home, unable to go out could hardly be called sweet. Lin Qin was puzzled. Zhang Qian continued, forgot to tell you, I saved a woman from our building. Now we're living together, and life's pretty nice. Lin Qin raised an eyebrow. A woman? Zhang Qian? Yes, she was screaming her head off from the zombies, and no one opened their doors, so I rescued her. Zhang Qian, the 2 of us aren't bored at all. Lin Qin's mouth twitched. It wasn't hard to guess what that implied. He rolled over, suddenly intrigued. Lin Qin, what does she look like? Pretty. Lin Qin, since you made a move, she must be good looking, right? Zhang Qian, of course, let me show you. The key thing is we click perfectly. Zhang Qian, by the way, you should do the same. If you run into a hot chick, be proactive. We tech guys never had time for women, but now we finally do, right? Zhang Qian, don't be so clueless. There are plenty of young girls out there just waiting for a warm chest like yours to... Zhang Qian, emoji Lin Qin. Zhang Qian, alright, check out my girl, not bad, huh? Soon Lin Qin received a photo from Zhang Qian. The woman was quite beautiful with a hot figure. Most importantly, compared to a few days ago, Zhang Qian looked far better. Lin Qin smiled quickly, ended the conversation, and turned off his phone. Lying at home, he stared at the ceiling, lost in thought. Perhaps he could try to enjoy life too. After all, he had supplies, weapons, and a safe house. He had everything. Would having a few women really be too much? Or should he go back to the old ways? A tense life, lonely and hopeless, suffocatingly oppressive. Did he have to relive that life again? Just thinking about it made Lin Qin feel suffocated. No. He was different now from before. He had the capital. Yet even so, Lin Qin poured cold water on the idea. Don't say, I didn't warn you. Be careful you don't end up courting disaster. After all, there were plenty of cases of inviting trouble in. But Zhang Qian was indifferent. Who knows how long we'll live? Enjoy now, live each day as it comes. Zhang Qian, don't be so anxious. Let's just take it easy. Zhang Qian, if the end result is still turning into a zombie, then isn't it better to live happily now? The outcome is the same anyway. Lin Qin sighed. He just wanted to survive while still enjoying life. The screams outside continued, a cacophony of mixed sounds clamoring in the streets. But most were from zombies. The area wasn't as crowded as the downtown district. After lying down for a while, Lin Qin got up and headed to the kitchen. Sweet and sour spare ribs, braised chicken. He had last eaten these at a restaurant. When Lin Qin duplicated them, the dishes were hot, so they still retained that fresh out-of-the-wok texture when taken out. Arriving at the kitchen, Lin Qin grabbed a can of cola from the fridge. A mouthful of rice brought immense satisfaction. After all, with those screams ringing outside, no one else could sit here in peace like him, enjoying such a feast. After eating his fill, Lin Qin rested for the surveillance continued. Throughout the streets, no other survivors were in sight. The bodies by the roadside were a chaotic mess. Lin Qin waited until 3 in the afternoon, and after confirming no zombies remained on the street, he got up to gather his things. But there was really nothing much to take. He just slung a backpack over his shoulder for show. With his pack on, Lin Qin stood up. Today he wouldn't go anywhere else. His goal was the 2 main gates of the villa complex. He would close the big iron gates, then slowly clear out all the zombies within the complex. That way at least the villa area would be safe. On the monitors, everything was empty. No trace of zombies. Lin Qin stepped out with his backpack. The 3 bodies from earlier at the entrance were gone, but judging by the bloodstains on the ground, it wasn't hard to guess what had happened. Lin Qin planned to head to the nearest main gate. That was where the zombie outbreak had concentrated this morning. Directly facing the gate, quite a few zombies must have entered. But there were only 2 residential blocks in this area, so the number of zombies shouldn't be too high. Across the road diagonally was Lanxiang Lake Park. Before the apocalypse, it must have been a favorite spot for the rich residents of this villa district. But now it had become the perfect hiding place for zombies. As long as he didn't startle them or make too much noise, there shouldn't be major problems. Treading carefully, Lin Qin approached the vicinity of the main gate. He didn't dare venture forward too boldly. At the guard booth ahead stood 3 zombies. Judging by the decay on their faces, they were likely remnants from the zombie outbreak during the morning supply rush. They hadn't fully rotted yet. Their skin still resembled that of normal humans, though covered with scratch and bite marks from zombies. Lin Qin opened his storage space and rummaged through it. If he wanted to avoid alerting the zombies, the guns had duplicated from the shooting range were out of the question. After all, gunshots were loud and he only needed to close the gate. No need to make such a racket. His storage space was quite comprehensive, so he retrieved a bow and arrows. Bows and arrows could be purchased on Taobao, but these were professional archery sets. When he discovered he could place orders, he simply bought several different styles. However, the original arrows were practice arrows with no lethal power. If he wanted to use them against zombies, the arrowheads would need modification. Lin Qin rummaged through his belongings, recalling that he had previously purchased several individual arrowheads from an online marketplace, willow leaf triangular and armor-piercing types. These could be fitted onto professional practice arrows. Moreover, they would make no sound at all. Lin Qin only needed to aim at the distant zombies. After reattaching the arrowheads, he began to imitate Nan Wei's posture, drawing the bow and taking aim. With a sharp whoosh, the practice arrow flew forth. However, his aim was far from matching Nan Wei's precision. The arrow failed to reach the zombies entirely. Lin Qin drew the bow a second time. Another whoosh, and the arrow struck the security booth, where the zombies roamed, clattering to the ground with a thud. This startled a few zombies, but they soon returned to their aimless wandering. Lin Qin paused, a hint of frustration creeping in. Had Nan Wei made using the bow look so deceptively simple? Why was his own accuracy so lacking? He pursed his lips, then shuffled forward a step, pulling the bowstring one. This time he learned from his previous 2 attempts. He drew the bowstring further back, while adjusting the angle of the arrow. This time he was determined to succeed. Though he had never practiced archery before, he had at least played Angry Birds. The concept of a parabolic trajectory was familiar enough. Yet despite his aim being true this time, the zombies were not stationary, they kept moving. Clearly this practice arrow was also wasted. Lin Qin sighed, but he had finally grasped the feel of the arrow's landing trajectory. He adjusted his stance and continued aiming. On his 4th attempt, Lin Qin succeeded. The arrow struck a zombie's eye with deadly precision, piercing straight through its skull. It was a clean instant kill. Lin Qin then aimed at a second zombie. This one wandered aimlessly, seemingly oblivious to its fallen comrade, continuing its idle patrol. Lin Qin drew the bow and aimed, constantly adjusting his targeting to follow the zombie's movements. Finally, with a whoosh, he struck the second zombie. But this time the zombie was not killed outright. The arrow only pierced its abdomen, passing through and tearing out chunks of flesh and blood. Lin Qin paused, silently retrieved another arrow, and continued aiming. He considered it practice. For now it seemed he would rely on the bow far more than the pistol. After all, it was silent, an ideal weapon for stealthy elimination. In dealing with 3 zombies, Lin Qin had wasted a total of 10 practice arrows. Nevertheless, the outcome was favorable. The 3 zombies lingering near the security booth were neutralized. After crouching in place for a moment, Lin Qin rose and walked over. The security booth stood at the center of the villa district's entrance, flanked by barrier gates that had long ceased to function. It was only upon drawing closer that Lin Qin noticed. The reason the zombies had been lingering beside the booth lay the corpse of another zombie. The body was decayed, and from the gnawed marks on the flesh, it was clear the 3 wandering zombies had been greedily feasting on it. Remnants of blood and shredded flesh clung to their mouths. They seemed to be in a state of idle wandering after having just fed. Lin Qin glanced toward the street outside. The street was desolate and empty with no other zombies attracted by his commotion. After a brief look at the grotesquely posed zombies, Lin Qin walked directly to the outermost sliding gate, which had been kept permanently shut, and pulled it open. The heavy iron gate was tall and sturdy. Lin Qin's movements were swift and unceasing. The gate long unopened screeched harshly under his efforts, but Lin Qin did not stop. Instead, he quickened his pace. The zombies in Lanxiang Lake Park stirred at the noise. Just as they began to converge, Lin Qin finally managed to latch the gates together. He secured them with a chain, watching as the zombies outside hurled themselves against the iron gate, shaking it violently in their frenzy. Lin Qin observed them for a moment. The zombies outside were clad in various garments and adorned with numerous accessories. Some carried backpacks, leather satchels, or wore hats. Many wore designer brands, had luxury car keys dangling from their waists, or bore delivery boxes. There should be plenty of food inside those, but surely it would have long expired and become inedible. Their sharp claws scraped against the iron gate, producing an eerie screech. Still, if food ran out, killing these zombies and scavenging from their bodies could yield a fair amount of supplies. At a rough glance among these zombies, those who had only recently turned carried backpacks filled with useful items. These were supplies looted from the only 2 supermarkets in the area. However, his primary task at the moment was not to plunder the zombies. After ensuring the zombies could not breach the iron gate, Lin Qin turned back into the villa complex. He now needed to hurry to the exit on the opposite side to seal that gate as well. This would prevent any zombies from entering the complex. Only then could he systematically clear the zombies inside and carve out a relatively safe zone. As for the other residents within the complex, whether they could leave was no longer Lin Qin's concern. Of course, the perimeter walls and gates were not too high to climb. The villa complex was sizable, and it took Lin Qin a while to traverse from east to west. Along every shaded path within the complex, traces of zombie activity were evident. Lin Qin walked openly along the roads, using the few scattered zombies he encountered as target practice. His archery accuracy was still far from reliable. Yet he firmly believed that with diligent practice, mastering accuracy was merely a matter of time. After all, in his past life, he had never possessed such an arsenal. Merely surviving had been a challenge back then, and he had not even lived long enough to acquire such an abundance of weapons. Lin Qin leisurely approached the zombie he had just slain. This male zombie still had a woman's handbag slung across its body. Whether it had been chasing a female survivor earlier, and how the bag ended up there, Lin Qin had no idea. But he was curious if it contained anything valuable. Gripping the practice arrow, he prodded the zombie's diagonally hung bag. The bag's clasp was open, revealing 2 red 100 yuan notes along with some loose change, a pack of tissues, and a bus pass. There was nothing else. Lin Qin paused. In the old days, he would have definitely picked up those 2 red notes. Now, however, they were utterly useless. He stepped past the zombie and continued his journey toward the western gate. The day was scorching hot, the sun blazing fiercely overhead. Even after walking just a short distance, Lin Qin was already feeling uncomfortably overheated. Walking along the shaded paths offered some relief. But then from the undergrowth beside the path came the rustling sound of weeds being disturbed. Lin Qin paused, tilting his ear to discern the direction of the sound. He eventually traced it to behind a row of hedges along the concrete road. With a furrowed brow, the entity lurking in the shadows finally revealed itself. It was a person. She was trembling violently, concealed behind the greenery. The hedge resembled the spherical shrubs often trimmed by workers on the roadside, forming a sizable clump. Several of these shrubs were planted in a row, and the girl was perfectly hidden behind one of them. If not for her pronounced quivering, Lin Qin would never have noticed her. He glanced left and right, finding the surroundings eerily silent. There were no other survivors in sight, nor any zombies. It seemed she must have been frightened by the few zombies wandering nearby earlier. Otherwise, she wouldn't be hiding in a place like this. Just look at how terrified this young girl was, trembling like a leaf in a storm. Even in her crouched position, it was clear she had a petite figure. The faint scent of perfume wafted through the air, and with Zhang Qin already holding a woman in his arms, enjoying the warmth of her embrace, Lin Qin's hormones surged instantly. A wave of tenderness washed over him. "Miss, there are no zombies around. You should head home now." Yet the girl paid him no heed. She continued to tremble. Ignored, Lin Qin felt a bit awkward. He stepped forward and reached out to place a hand on her shoulder, hoping to calm her down. She didn't resist, and Lin Qin couldn't help but feel a flicker of delight. Just as he was about to crouch down to soothe her further, the girl suddenly turned her head. Her mouth was smeared with blood and flesh, and her hands clutched a chunk of meat torn from some unknown source. She was devouring it with relish. Lin Qin held his breath, assaulted by a foul stench. Upon seeing him, her eyes lit up with hunger, and she lunged forward. His face twitching, Lin Qin punched the female zombie squarely in the face. Apart from her mouth, everything else was intact. Lin Qin even thought that if cleaned up properly, she might still be a pretty zombie girl. He could even manage with her as is. But the punch had no effect. The zombie remained unmoved, charging at him like a starving wolf. It pinned Lin Qin to the ground. Lin Qin. He had been careless. Zombies possessed immense strength, even in a female form. For a moment she held him down, and he couldn't break free. Her mouth gaped open, the sound of her jaws snapping together unnervingly loud. Up close, Lin Qin could even see bits of flesh wedged between her teeth. A viscous, nauseating liquid was about to drip from the corner of her mouth. He thought to himself that next time he should bring a pair of goggles. If something like that got into his mouth or eyes, it would certainly cause problems. Lin Qin kicked her in the abdomen and shoved her away with all his might. The zombie was successfully sent flying. After all, while zombies were strong, their weight remained the same. He managed to kick her away only because she was petite and light. If it had been a several hundred-pound fat zombie, he would have been powerless. Lin Qin finally scrambled to his feet. His first instinct was to push the bough that had fallen beside him when the zombie tackled him. As the zombie lunged at him again, Lin Qin pulled out a fire axe and swung it down with force. Only when the zombie collapsed to the ground motionless did he let out a long breath. The zombie died with its eyes wide open, its still somewhat crimson blood oozing from the wound on its skull mingling with other fluids. A face that was once fairly pretty now lay before Lin Qin, but it was covered in black veins. It wasn't that he was being unromantic, but look at what he kept encountering. What kind of twisted fate was this? Lin Qin sighed. After dealing with this zombie, if he saw anyone else hiding in the bushes who looked remotely normal, he decided to just ignore them. Had he been bewitched? Why did he ever think he could emulate Zhang Qian's approach? The rest of the journey went smoothly with zombies appearing less frequently. Mostly there were just 2 or 3 scattered zombies, easy to dispatch and good for practice. In total he had killed about a dozen zombies. However, he had wasted quite a few practice arrows. But it was no big deal. He could replicate them infinitely, and his storage space was piled high with them. Soon Lin Qin arrived at the garbage station. This was where he had killed his first zombie, and also where he had met Nan Wei's first woman. But as time passed, the zombie corpse lying on the ground had completely rotted into a pool of foul liquid, emitting a nauseating stench. Flies buzzed around everywhere. Lin Qin deliberately took a wide detour to avoid the flies tainting him. He noticed that the 2 male corpses he had shot earlier were now gone. But Lin Qin wasn't surprised. After skirting the garbage station for a short while, he discovered that the gate of one villa's courtyard was left slightly ajar. At the base of the gate, near the handle, lay a male corpse. Blood had spread from his abdomen, and he was beyond saving. He seemed to have died quite peacefully. Yet there were no signs of a struggle on the ground, nor any indication that zombies had been there. The cause of death was rather peculiar. Could he have starved to death? Lin Qin glanced at it twice and continued on his way. The west gate was different from the east gate. It was closer to other residential areas, and there were more people here than near Lanxiang Lake's gate. After all, that area was a small park for walks with 2 supermarkets selling goods. Given the commotion in the morning, the west side should have been even more chaotic and intense. But the villa district with its standalone houses and larger spaces couldn't compare to the residential area. Around the residential area, there were numerous shops. If anyone was truly fighting for food, that would have been the first battleground. Lin Qin walked slowly, growing more cautious as he neared the west gate. After all, this gate faced more residential communities. But the surroundings were deathly quiet. The road was cluttered with various items, and scattered newspapers fluttered in the wind. Lin Qin stood by the gate and looked out. The doors of the shops along the street were all broken, and the only intact door was covered in trampled plastic bags. There was no need to go closer. The interiors had already been looted clean. However, the desolate streets made it the perfect time to close the gate. It was easier than he had imagined. The east gate at least had a few lingering zombies, but here there was nothing, completely empty. Lin Qin shook his head and began searching for the gate mechanism. This gate was different from the east gate. The east gate was a sliding iron gate that moved from left to right. Here it was a pair of ornate double doors in a palace style. They were made of iron and looked quite sturdy. Lin Qin looked around and then moved to the edge of the gate, and gates like these were rarely closed, so moving them would inevitably make some noise. Creak. As soon as he nudged it, a surprisingly loud sound echoed. But it was much louder than he had anticipated. He turned to look at the hinges. A bit of rust had already formed on them. Before Lin Qin could make a move, a faint rustling sound came from the other side of the street. Lin Qin paused, but he saw nothing. Gazing out at the street, a few zombies, attracted by the noise, stirred restlessly. They seemed to have emerged from some unknown nook or cranny. Not spotting him, Lin Qin paid them no mind. Yet if he were to continue closing the door, the resulting noise would inevitably draw their attention. Lin Qin had no choice but to give up. Forget it, it seemed he wouldn't be closing this gate today. He turned around, planning to head back to the villa near the dump to rest for a while. After all, the weather outside was scorching, and in just this short time, he was already drenched in sweat. If he stood under the sun waiting for the zombie horde to disperse, he would die of heat stroke. Lin Qin paused, then turned to head back. The villa near the dump had its courtyard gate wide open. Lin Qin stepped over a corpse and walked inside. As he had expected, the house door was also open. It required no effort at all. However, the room was a mess. It looked as if it had been ransacked. But inside it was slightly better than outside, shielded from the blazing sun, though still stiflingly hot. The air remained oppressively muggy. Just as Lin Qin was about to sit down and rest, he heard a faint sound from the courtyard behind him. Glancing around, Lin Qin instinctively hid in the kitchen, crouching down. Footsteps drew nearer, and someone outside closed the courtyard gate before entering the villa. A long shadow stretched by the sunlight outside fell onto the tiles at the entrance of the kitchen where Lin Qin was hiding. Then the footsteps grew closer. The person lingered indecisively at the doorway. Lin Qin wasn't sure if it was a zombie or a human, though he didn't catch a foul odor that didn't rule out a zombie. For close quarters combat, a fire axe was the best choice. Lin Qin gripped his fire axe tightly, ready to strike. Suddenly, the person hesitating at the threshold moved. The shadow on the floor drew nearer, and the footsteps quickened as the figure rushed toward the kitchen. Knock! Lin Qin immediately rose and swung his fire axe. The other person, seeing Lin Qin, gasped in fright, closed their eyes, and wildly swung a steel pipe they had picked up. Unable to do otherwise, Lin Qin had to step back to avoid being hit by the flailing pipe. After a few wild swings, Xiao Shui realized the person before her wasn't attacking. She squinted and cautiously looked over. Lin Qin's fairly handsome face came into view. Letting out a sigh of relief, she was also surprised. "Mr. Lin, it's you." Being called by name caught Lin Qin off guard. He looked at the face before him and froze for a moment. Wasn't this the female real estate agent who had shown him the house? Recognizing a familiar face, Xiao Shui panted and looked around. Finding nothing amiss, she wore an apologetic expression. She said in a soft voice, "I'm sorry, I thought you were. I didn't scare you, did I? I saw the courtyard gate was open, so I just came in. It was so quiet here, I thought there might be zombies, so I..." She trailed off, but they both understood each other tacitly. However, Lin Qin couldn't help but glance at Xiao Shui's chest. He still remembered that day at the agency. Dressed in ordinary bulky casual, where Xiao Shui looked rather plain, her perfect figure completely concealed. But a short-sleeved shirt, pants, and sneakers were the easiest outfit for fleeing in the apocalypse. It was a shame that this outfit completely covered her figure, a stark contrast to that day. Lin Qin pulled his thoughts back and silently put away his fire axe. The two of them went to the living room. The sofa was a mess. Xiao Shui sat there nervously, occasionally stealing glances at Lin Qin and then at the corpse outside. Lin Qin noticed her fidgeting and raised an eyebrow, explaining, "Don't worry, I didn't kill that person outside. When I came, the door was already open. I thought no one was here and I could scavenge some supplies. I live nearby, so it's not strange for me to be here. But why are you here?" He remembered the agency was quiet. Running into each other here seemed almost surreal. Lin Qin's explanation put Xiao Shui at ease. She reached up to tuck her disheveled hair. "I live in the apartment complex across the street. This area is quite remote. Only 2 bus routes pass through here, so the rent is much cheaper. I'm just a trainee and don't have much money to rent a place, so I had to come out here. And the past few days have been so chaotic. I saw so many people killed by their companions. It was terrifying. I've never seen anything like it. If I weren't at my wits' end, I wouldn't have come out looking for food. And the supermarkets are basically looted clean. I didn't find anything, and I even ran into zombies. So I just kept running until I ended up here." Lin Qin remained silent. It was clear she was badly shaken and panicked. Her face was deathly pale. Suddenly, as if struck by a thought, she grabbed Lin Qin's hand, her eyes urgent. "Oh, you should run. The zombies outside are probably heading this way. Don't let me drag you down. I really can't run anymore. You should go quickly. This place isn't safe." Not safe. He wasn't boasting. He had originally intended to close the west gate, isolating the entire villa area into a relatively safe and controllable zone. Leaving now was definitely not an option. Besides, he had plenty of weapons and wasn't too afraid of zombies. Of course, for now, he wasn't afraid of any number less than 100. After all, he had a gun. But generally, he preferred not to use it if possible. The sound of gunfire would attract too many zombies. "Don't be afraid. They'll protect you." Lin Qin patted her shoulder, but Xiao Shui gave him a doubtful look. "But the zombies?" She wanted to remind him that there were quite a few. How could he protect her? But when she saw the fire axe beside the sofa, she swallowed her words. A fire axe was certainly better than her steel pipe, and he was a man. He would surely be much stronger than a woman like her. She had seen other pretty girls in the building willing to cling to powerful men to survive, some even forced. Either way, it was a hard life. Escaping was partly for that reason. But the bigger reason was that the stronger men in the building were all old. She had nowhere else to go anyway. At least Lin Qin was someone she knew. Bang! Amid her chaotic thoughts, a sudden explosion sounded outside. Startled, Xiao Shui threw herself into Lin Qin's arms. "Oh, that's so scary." Her voice was naturally pleasant, carrying a hint of a lowly tone. Now as she buried herself in Lin Qin's arms, it was laced with panic. Lin Qin felt as if a protective instinct had suddenly been awakened within him. He immediately wrapped his arms around her in return. "Don't be afraid, I'll protect you." The aftermath of the explosion quickly dissipated and Xiaoxue pulled back from Lin Qin's embrace. Her face was flushed with shyness. Lin Qin swallowed, nervously feeling somewhat uneasy. He rose and walked directly upstairs. The third floor offered a broader view, allowing him to see farther. The explosion downstairs was clearly visible. A barbecue shop along the street was billowing thick black smoke. It was unclear what exactly had exploded inside. After the black smoke dispersed, Lin Qin spotted a few zombies wandering near the shop. Xiaoxue also came over, glanced outside, and stood nervously beside Lin Qin. "Oh my god, how could it explode?" A normally functioning shop wouldn't explode unless there was a gas leak or something triggered an ignition. But for now it was impossible to investigate. The explosion had left the zombies on the street either dead or maimed. There were only about 3 or 4 in total. As for the zombie chase, Xiaoxue mentioned Lin Qin couldn't see any sign of it. Yet this explosion seemed to trigger a chain reaction as similar blasts occurred several streets away. From a distance, at least 5 plumes of black smoke rose over the city. Lin Qin frowned, puzzled. He had no idea what was happening. However, such explosions would prevent all zombies from converging here. After observing the street and confirming no additional zombies had appeared, Lin Qin stepped outside. Xiaoxue nervously grabbed Lin Qin's hand, standing by the door, afraid to go out. Lin Qin turned back to see her looking at him with moist, pitiful eyes. "No, it's dangerous outside." Lin Qin's expression was stern, but his heart swelled with chivalry. "Don't worry, I'm just going to close the gate. You stay here." He led her back to the living room, then after a moment's thought pretended to pull a pack of instant noodles from his pocket, looking reluctant. "I don't have much food left. If you don't mind, you can have this half-eaten open pack for now. You just stay in this room and wait for rescue. There's food in the kitchen to last you another 2 days until the rescue team arrives." With that, Lin Qin pulled his hand free from Xiaoxue's grasp and went out alone. The villa's gate creaked loudly, but this time he managed to close it smoothly. He fastened the bolt and then headed back in a different direction. As for Xiaoxue, regardless, she had helped him find this. Bypassing that villa, Lin Qin now felt an intense heat. All he wanted was to return to his own home, enjoy the cool air conditioning, and rest comfortably. Xiaoxue crouched by the courtyard gate, ready to pounce the moment Lin Qin's figure appeared. This man was now her only lifeline. But Lin Qin might never return. After a moment's thought, Xiaoxue stayed by the gate, watching it nervously. From the main entrance, 3 paths led in different directions. If she kept watch, she could see where Lin Qin went. Sure enough, he chose a different direction. She immediately followed. She kept a moderate distance. Rescue was still 2 days away. If all went well, she could leave with the rescue team. But what if it didn't? Things always had 2 sides. Wanting to survive wasn't shameful. The weather was scorching and Lin Qin wiped the sweat from his forehead. He thought about taking a shower when he got back. Xiaoxue followed him silently, step by step. Seeing how hot he was, she hurried forward and offered him a clean tissue. She simply accompanied him the whole way. Lin Qin couldn't help but stop and look back at her. Xiaoxue gazed back at him, innocently saying nothing. When Lin Qin walked forward, she followed. When he stopped, she stopped. Both gates of the villa area were now closed. Now the zombies outside couldn't get in, and those inside couldn't get out. It was like beating a dog in a dead end. Lin Qin had originally planned to rest first, and then clear out the zombies slowly. But now he changed his mind. He altered his direction and headed north, an area he had never explored before. Each villa in the district had the same layout, differing only in location. Lin Qin walked forward, and the surroundings were eerily quiet. There wasn't even a bird's chirp. At the edge of the green belt, several rotting corpses emitted a foul stench. Flies buzzed around them. Xiaoxue looked terrified, but still chose to follow Lin Qin. As if sensing something, she nervously grabbed his sleeve. Lin Qin paused slightly, ignoring Xiaoxue's gesture. He heard unusual sounds. He crouched down and reached into the nearby greenery. When he pulled his hand back, he was holding a bow and arrow. "Did you hear that?" Xiaoxue stared in surprise at the bow that had suddenly appeared in his hand, asking in a low voice. Lin Qin didn't answer, he just gave her a look. Instantly, Xiaoxue fell silent. Lin Qin stepped forward cautiously, carefully identifying the source of the sounds. Then he saw 5 zombies in the yard of a nearby villa. They were neatly arranged as if having a tea party. Lin Qin aimed his bow, took them all out, and then leaped directly into the yard. The 5 zombies in the yard were still decently dressed, but the gate was closed with no signs of zombies having entered. There were no bite marks or scratches on their bodies, which seemed rather eerie. However, having been infected with the virus, even without going outside, they would eventually turn into zombies. This family was clearly a result of the virus outbreak. Lin Qin pinched his nose, deciding not to go inside. Xiaoxue glanced at the house, then at Lin Qin, and followed him without a word. So far, he must have his reasons for everything. Not bothering to search for useful supplies must mean there was some other. Yes, that had to be it. The two of them circled the northern area, killing about a dozen zombies. Xiaoxua stayed close behind Lin Qin. She asked no questions and made no complaints. Like a shadow, she followed without any resentment. Lin Qin couldn't help but admire her for enduring such high temperatures outdoors. Walking back toward the villa, Lin Qin couldn't help but look back at the woman behind him. You don't have to keep following me. You know rescue is only 2 days away. Just hold on in that room for 2 more days.